Welcome to our Tuesday, February 21st Select Board meeting. It is Fat Tuesday. So happy Mardi Gras. Is there any comment from the public that is not relative to tonight's agenda? Okay, moving along. Any additions or deletions to tonight?
We have Matthew.
Oh, Matthew.
Hi, good evening. I just have a quick question. I've been paying attention to the Planning Commission's meetings, and I've been made aware that they've finally been able to pass some recommendations regarding the Village RC zoning district. And I was hoping to see it on this meeting's agenda with the Select Board, because they were essentially told me it was going to forward to you all, but I didn't see it on this agenda. So I'm actually just kind of curious when we would potentially see the Village RC, the recommendations from the Planning Commission for the Village RC zoning updates potentially on the Select Board's agenda.
Recording in progress.
Matt, thanks for bringing that up. So I got the documents from Virginia, the chair of the Planning Commission. I think it was on Friday. So we didn't have enough time to put it onto this agenda. So I would anticipate that we'll get it on to the next Select Board meeting, which will be March 13th. We're going to be skipping the first Monday in March for town meeting. We're making up at the next meeting. So look for that agenda, and there should be a review of that and potentially setting of a hearing date for those items.
Okay, great. That's appreciate it. That was just my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, moving along to any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll move right into the agenda. First on our agenda is the FY22 audit. So we have the copy of the audit was online. And we have a representative from RHR here. Is Ron?
Hi, folks.
Hello, thank you for being here. So let's start by, can you just give us a brief overview? We've had a couple days to read the 85 pages. So just your process, and then we'll open with questions.
Sure. So we came in. Oh my goodness! Number one, we're new to the town of Richmond, and we appreciate the opportunity to do your audit for FY22. I'm Ron Smith. I've been doing this for 32 years. All I do is live in the world of government. I think we audit close to 100 municipalities and close to 150 municipalities in the state of Vermont, and we audit over half of the municipalities in the state of Maine. So I'm born and raised in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. So I know all about Vermont, and I still am a resident in Vermont. So doing the 6/30/22 audit, you got our highest opinion. It's an unmodified opinion. So I'll start with that. As far as hitting some of the highlights of the audit, what we like to see, any municipality using the national benchmark out there for financial condition is 8 to 16 to 24% of your operating budget sitting in fund balance, carried forward from 1 year to next. So that's the equivalent of, for putting in Richmond terms, somewhere around 200,000 at 8% of your operating budget, 400,000 at 16%, and 600,000 at 24% of your operating budget. You guys are a little north of $800,000. So where does that put you guys? At about 120 days of operating fund balance, and I think that certainly is good for the town of Richmond. Some other just highlights of last year. You've got some major funds. You're actually going back to your general fund. Your general fund grew by over $200,000 from 21 to 22, and that was largely in part, you guys, to unspent expenses, at the town of Richmond. I think that was about $200,000 you returned back to your bottom line and reappropriated for the next year. Your highway fund, went from $940,000 to $661,000. That's presented as a separate major fund on your financial statements. It's always historically been done that way in the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont legislature, basically laxed up, the requirements as far as highway funds this in the past 2 years. So you've got the ability now to, for lack of a better word, to commingle those with your general fund revenues. I actually like the practice, of keeping that money separate. Literally it's your largest expense next to your education budget, within your municipality. And I think it's a good practice, you guys. And I certainly can appreciate roads in Vermont and certainly the need to take care of them, especially during the harsh winters that we may get. So I actually like the practice and certainly wouldn't discourage you from carrying on that practice, even though, the state's kind of laxed its, its requirements and guidelines over the maintenance of those funds. Other highlights for it, ARPA funds, you guys have $618,000 sitting in reserve, for the town for ARPA funds that was made available because of the pandemic for virtually all government. So that's certainly a good position. And then the other two things that I really think kind of define and make Richmond, a little bit more complicated, when it comes to the world of government is your two utility funds, and that's water and wastewater. And they both had a positive financial condition, of what we call the infrastructure investment, and then the rest of it's the positive, condition of the two utility funds, and they both were in a positive situation. Water was $156,000 to the positive, and wastewater was about $1 million, and plus you guys had ample money tied up in your infrastructure in both of those utility projects. So yeah, that's those are pretty much the highlights, of the audit for 6/30/22. We issued a management letter as well, gave you a couple of advices, and I think I participated in a conversation last week with some representatives of the town and your banking advisor. And one of the comments that we had made to kind of piggyback on that conversation that I participated last year was having a fund balance policy, having some type of a reserve, and what the town certainly, dictates what it will keep, and carry forward from year to year to year. I think it's a great practice. It's a practice that's, that's accepted in this country and certainly applies to all government, including your town. And I would definitely say to give that one a lot of thought, especially after the conversations we had last week with kind of the excess cash that the town had, and then there was just another best practice. And, you guys are pretty much a one-stop shop, in Connie's corner. I think Connie does a great job, in managing and maintaining the books, and, and she does a lot, and one of the things that we had made is probably a better practice on like journal entries, as I recall, and, just, some of the things that you could implement for a better practice there for a third set of eyes. But that third set of eyes would obviously need some introduction and understanding of town government and really how the finances worked. And as I said before, Richmond's a complicated town.
Thank you so much. Let's open it up for the select board questions.
Okay, I have some questions, one or two. On page 10, if you want to share page 10.
Yeah, let me get that up 1 minute. Am I at the right spot for AJ?
It's the one that says, it's page 10 at the bottom. The document numbers and the page numbers aren't the same.
Oh,
So it's going to be the one that says Table 2, Town of Richmond, Vermont, change in that position. It's basically the second page that actually has numbers on it. Keep going.
yep, there you go.
That one in there.
Okay. So starting at the top, charges for services. I am curious what caused there to be such a big leap in charges for services in 2022 compared to 2021. That could be for Josh or anybody else who would know.
I'll just hop in on here, Connie. Remember, we're looking at your section, Connie, the MD&A, which is kind of derivative, but he's looking at all the governmental activities. That could be a rise, Connie, in the pension cost and things that the government would contribute towards retirement and all that. So it's not a fair comparison. to compare it like, your police funds that didn't collect what they, had budgeted, like ticket revenue. I think you budgeted like 15, collected 3. Connie, there's other things in here, and may I suggest, Connie, that we give them a breakdown of some of those other things, because some of those other things you don't budget for. It's a government-wide reconciliation. And if you guys all flip to the page, just bear with me, you all. I can't seem to minimize my screen here. I had your financial statements up. But if you go flip to a statement, I believe it's going to be like E or F in the financial statements. There's a reconciliation of what some of those factors are, you all. But I think Connie could give you a more descriptive one by pulling it out of the town general ledger.
I'm guessing it's legal.
Ron, do you know what page that financial statement's on that you
I'll
referenced?
tell you, I'd love to tell you. I can't get out of the screen here. Hold on, folks. Yeah, stop. So go down one more page.
E or F?
Yeah, 21. Go to 21 right there. So there's a reconciliation of the town's financial statements, which would be statement E, to like statement B, which is where that schedule came from. And remember, MD&A is your section, but that's where it's getting pulled from, you all. And like I said, with the pension fund, there's $90,000, right there of pension activity. And those are things that you don't typically budget, but there's a required statement out there, that makes us put that in there, and it typically wouldn't have something to do with, whether it be, the fees that you would charge for police or rescue or anything like that. I know you don't have a rescue there, but, the police department's the one that comes to my mind the most. So
You're saying that
my
charges
dog right now.
includes pensions? In terms of revenues, charges for services includes pensions?
Yeah, it does. There's a governmental wide statement, you guys. I don't make this up. So there's a statement in there that this is a required statement. And if you go to statement A, if you want to go back to the pages, I'll tell you exactly what this does. If you go back to statement A, stop right there. It reconciles that statement A and scroll down. That statement B, scroll down one more.
There's the 281, 381 I'm asking about right there, second
Yeah.
column, bottom of charges.
So this doesn't correlate to your budget, folks. This correlates to a lot of governmental accounting standards that has us reconcile and put things in that wouldn't typically, be budgeted out there, be more like you would find in your footnotes to your financial statements.
Okay, so $225,806, very top of that column.
Yeah.
What is that?
So if you want to go to, I'll send you it another page. So go down. I always say start from the back and look towards the front. Go back. If you want to scroll down towards the bottom, you're going to go look for like Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. I'm going to show you everything that wasn't the pension in there.
Are these way at the back of the?
Yeah,
document?
if you keep going, whoever's driving this car, I'll tell you a close stop here. Keep going.
Like a back of driver's ed.
Right? Stop.
Okay, that was step.
One.
So there's a lot of them right there, but you see where it says charges for service, that $163,000? That's the money you guys actually budget for that you take to town meeting. The difference of that other $220,000 are other reconciling items that are shown on, like that pension that is shown on, that statement back, statement E, I believe is what it was back earlier.
Okay, I'm still having a great deal of difficulty understanding that. My apologies. But the 281,000 was listed as town administration, and you're saying that was all pension.
No, I'm not saying that's all pension. I'm saying that's
what was the others? What was the
Pardon
rest
me?
of it? 90,000 is pension. 90,000 is pension. What's the other 190,000?
Well, charges for services right there. Connie, do you have a copy of your trial balance that you can give them a detailed breakdown of what the 163 was? You got police ticket revenue in there. You've got other things for the police department that are in there. I think that's a big piece of it, and there's some other charges in there. I just don't have it in front of me. We can get it for you.
BL or non-tax
The
revenue.
number to be concerned of, is you know, your town center, so I'm looking at another page on this thing, your town center reserve fund, you know, is a piece of that. The $4,600, I believe, you know, in totality, the thing that caused the budgeted item, the 163, with what you collected of 159 to 4,600, that was largely, folks, in to your police department not collecting all of what it estimated in budget, and I think ticket collections was the biggest piece of that. But we can get your breakdown of that.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, going back to page 10.
And again, page 10 is yours. That's your MD&A. Those are just.
I'm happy with that. So I have questions for anybody who knows the answer. Property taxes on page 10. I joined the board during the 2021-2020. I've joined the board sometime. The taxes went from 10,130. Say what? Yeah, that we went from that to 8,577,000. So we had a significant dip in property taxes collected. When we filled out the application for ARPA funds, we said we're going to claim that as revenue loss, even though we didn't have a revenue loss.
Right.
Was this a revenue loss?
Well, I think, and I'll let Ron and Connie jump back in, but I think this includes both municipal taxes and education.
Correct.
And I think in both instances, they were both down as far as what the budgets were in 22 to 21.
And
So-
education was a big piece of that
We
too.
budgeted to collect less.
Okay, so in a sense, you know, it is appropriate for us to say ARPA revenue
Well,
because we're
I
down by a bunch.
suppose so, but it wasn't like we had that many more delinquent taxes. Like the number that we set out to collect at the beginning of 22 was less than we had set out to collect in FY 21.
But it
Okay.
wasn't
Josh,
one-
I can put this into current terms, what your current property tax collections were. I won't explain the dip, but a lot of that was education. I know that, Josh. If you go back to that same page, if you were driving that car, I think your tax collections were like within $4,600 of what you actually budgeted for in FY 21 as well.
Yeah,
But education, I believe, was the big dip, and that was obviously mitigated by ESSER funds, you know, to the school system. $5,800 was your property tax collections in there, and there's various things in there with all of that. But the $5,800 is what your actual property tax collection rate was, you know, to budget to actual for FY 22.
Okay, back to page 10. And again, I know this is our page. 2 pages back. Yeah, there we go. Okay, town administration. The first line under expenses. The jump is significant.
118%.
Yeah. What's up with
Does-
that?
There's going to be depreciation in that number on fixed assets. I can tell you that's going to be a big piece of the jump.
But wouldn't
And
depreciation-
I believe that one of the items in administration in the town's general budget, contractual, is overspent in FY 22 as well.
But this is 118% increase year over year.
Yeah,
And-
so if you go down, to that statement, statement B. And again, you got to look at that reconciliation. Stop right there. You're gonna see somewhere in here, town administration expenses, the more 1,477,000. Now go down to statement E. It's gonna tell you, it's gonna have things that you wouldn't typically budget for, like depreciation and things like that. Stop, go back one, Josh, statement D, I'm sorry. So there's no, it's not, Josh, one more, I'm sorry, you were driving too fast. No, down,
D.
one more.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, so there you go. Capital asset acquisitions, depreciation, a lot of that's gonna make up that jump. You know, the infrastructure, obviously, for town administration, you know, went up drastically, so did the depreciation. That would have caused that jump. And again, if you guys want a detailed analysis, I'm sure Connie can provide that with you to you as well.
And can you just explain, so would capital asset acquisition be significantly different from 21 to 22?
I don't know. I'd have to go back in and look. Connie or Josh might be able to explain that. So.
I can't off the top of my head.
Josh, if I'll take a shot at it for you guys. If you go literally, Josh, to like one of the last 3 pages of the document, it'll show you what you bought and where. And I'm assuming town administration is going to be a big area. And I would think, you know, a lot of it with your town center is going to be part of it. But if you go down towards the end. Yeah, Josh, it'll literally be like one of the last 3 schedules.
Okay,
Yeah, now scroll back, Josh. Yeah, scroll back, but not down. Yeah, you want like schedule IJ, Josh. You want to go towards the back of the document. You're looking for schedule of fixed assets.
okay. I don't think we want Schedule J.
Yeah, keep going. No, just keep, it's gonna say schedule of fixed assets. Yeah, I don't see it in here, Josh. We can get you that too.
Okay. Going on back down to page
The
10.
$750,000, I can tell you, is depreciation in that number.
Okay, I am not an accountant, nor do I play one on TV, but when I look at this and I keep getting told expenses includes depreciation, I know there's schedules further on, but I find it very confusing to read when I have to go, well, that's not really expenses in the classical sense. It's money that we're factoring in as depreciation in a budgetary sense. Anyway, unclassified.
Well, just so we're clear though, you know, this is a national standard, you know,
Oh,
you
I
don't.
understand.
budget for
I'm
depreciation.
admitting to my own confusion and why I've
Okay.
got it. Unclassified, 39,650 from 6. Why do we have so much money unclassified? What is that?
Defer to.
Josh, for the sake of keep bouncing back and forth, Josh, if you go, there should be a detailed schedule of what's in that unclassified, and Connie may have to break it out further on what exactly was spent. Some of that could even be depreciation as well.
Then why isn't it classified?
That's last year. I can't explain last year. We didn't audit last year. I don't know.
I know the 39,650 is in 2022. That is the year you audited.
Correct, but 21, you asked what the $6 is in the jump.
I'm
I
asking
just
why
don't
there's
know.
anything unclassified. Why is 39,650 unclassified? If it's depreciation, great, but why wasn't that classified with some other specific category?
It's other funds. It's other funds. And again, we can give you a breakdown of what that is.
Okay,
It's
I would
not
like.
the general fund, it's other funds. Remember, governmental activities includes all of your funds. It's not just your general fund, it's grants. It's anything non-tax, property tax related. And I think a lot of that gets into kind of understanding, you know, how these financial statements are, and maybe you guys, we could do a workshop to move this conversation along so we can, you know, better educate everybody, you know, on how this flows. But those governmental activity funds that you keep talking about, that's everything. That's your general fund. It's all the other grants and things. So you're not comparing apples to apples. That's why you got to go down to statement A through statement J to compare those apples to apples.
Okay,
So I would like to just say though, that gaslighting is not allowed. If we don't understand, it is our job to understand. And so when we're asking you questions, it's so that we can better understand.
Sure. And I just think I'd be more than happy to and if we want to keep answering these questions, you know, I think a workshop may be better is all I'm saying, a better environment to do this.
going on, page 66 and page 11. On page 11, if you want to start there, under special revenue funds, halfway down the page, right where your mouse actually, 193, 984. Keep going down. Right there. Okay, so special revenue funds consists of 190, this is 2022, 193,984, committed 882,000, assigned 67,950. Now go to page 66, which is almost at the end. And we should figure out the fudge factor so that we can jump right to the right page each time. Okay, 66. Now, if you look at special revenue funds here, we see due from other funds, 941,475, which is back of the envelope, back of the napkin calculating, that's significantly more than page 11 says we even have in special revenue funds. how are we having due from other funds?
We're
971?
really getting into weeds here, you guys, because that really goes to the understanding of these financial statements. And I really would say a breakdown, to kind of understand, all these other funds is what you just talked about there, that has depreciation and how they get converted from basically budgetary to government-wide financial statements. I really think a workshop's in order, you guys. I really do.
Okay, I think we can schedule a workshop. Bard, I'm going to have you ask your question and then I have a couple simple ones.
All right, this is probably a simple, big picture one, and we probably don't need to move to a different page. But if I recall correctly, referred to a fund balance, I think unrestricted of 120 days. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, 90 days. Yeah, 90 days. You have 120.
Yeah, so that's where I was going, and I'm sort of looking at that going, one level it's good because we got lots of cash, one level it's bad because we got lots of cash. So arguably, I just want to confirm, we should be looking at 90 days that we have more than we need. Would we not include that?
Yeah, and I definitely think whoever asked that question, that's where the management comment that comes in with the fund balancy, would be with the discipline of that for the town, is really to look at that fund balance policy so you can kind of guide that ship towards that 90 days.
Okay, and I have a question. Why would ARPA funds not be considered special revenue funds?
They are special revenue funds. They're in the other governmental funds. And they're deferred as well, as I recall. And
So
if you want
on-
to go back to that schedule, the
they're not
$618,000, I'll show you exactly where they are.
What schedule?
If you go to Schedule C, page 69 in the document. There's your ARPA funds.
Right, and they're not considered under page 40. They're not considered restricted, but they
Well,
should
they're
be.
restricted. The special revenue funds are all restricted. And they're
I know
deferred
they
to,
should be.
excuse me?
I said, I know they should be.
Yeah, and what we do, what they've done is what the town's done is they've deferred that revenue because I'm not sure if you guys had on June 30th an intended plan to spend them, but if you go back again to that page 69, the whole 617 was deferred, into this fiscal year 23 to, I'm assuming, to accommodate what the town plan was for FY 23.
So could you go to page 67? Where did I see ARPA? Because I noticed that if this is our special revenue funds.
Yeah, it was back on page 60. Whoever's asking the question, it was back on 69, and then 3 more pages down, I believe, the revenue piece of it with what you got, during the year. Just scroll down. Stop
It
right there.
continues on page 71. The 69 to 71.
60.
So there's no ARPA here.
No, it's
Oh,
69
down.
71. I think you want one more.
But under restricted,
So there's some, and then the other is 2 pages back up.
Mhm.
Yeah, you guys actually used $5,900 in FY 22. What you didn't use is back on page 69.
so if you go back to
Mhm.
69. This is under assets, but not under fund balances.
Yeah,
It's
but
under-
deferred revenue, if you look halfway down the page, you've got $617,000 deferred to a subsequent year to use.
Okay,
So it's there.
so it's deferred revenue and not under fund balances.
Right.
So the town's taking the position to defer it as opposed to recognize it and deferring it till it's recognized.
Okay,
Okay, if we do a workshop, I'm all in favor of that, but the taxpayers have a right to know what's being discussed. Would that be a warned meeting?
yes,
think so.
I would think
absolutely.
so. Okay, and we need to get that scheduled because I understand that we are following generally accepted accounting practices as laid down by the Government Accounting Standards Board, et cetera, ad nauseum. But if these are impenetrable to members of the select board who've seen them a time or two, they're going to be even more so to our taxpayers. And we need to have these explained, even if it should be obvious to, I mean, June and I sat at her house for 2 hours yesterday talking about this. June has extensive experience reading ledgers, balance sheets, et cetera. And she was.
I got it.
And audit. Yeah, and she was confused about this stuff, and I'm just a computer programmer and I'm lost. So I would like to not be told over and over, we're following standards. It's like, that's great, we're following standards, but we need to know what this stuff is all about.
Also on page 40, it says we have $2,447,422 as uncollateralized and uninsured.
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe a lot of it was different insurance that was done, and I think that was actually discussed about with your banker, last week on how they collateralize all that with the Federal Home Loan and Bank, as I recall.
Okay, so it was mentioned at last week's meeting, because I remember them saying that it is all collateralized. I think it would be important for the select board to get the information showing that all of our money is protected.
And again, whoever's asking that question, all that's simply saying is that's not traditional FDIC insurance. So what your bank does, and as I believe your bank did, as he explained last week, he goes to Federal Home Loan and Bank in Massachusetts and actually has a piece of paper and an agreement executed with them to cover what the FDIC, over and above the FDIC insurance.
He did say that, and I'm getting off the select board, which is why I'm saying this is something that should be
Hey, that's a
shared.
great question. That is a great question. Absolute great question, and certainly one everybody ought to know. If we're talking about how to read them, let's talk about really, again, something else of importance here. And that certainly is a great question. And as I recall, that was covered last week.
Right, it was covered, but then I saw it in the audit and was confused.
And the meeting we had last week with TD Bank was not a public meeting. And so the members of the public were not privy to that discussion. So it needs to take place in the public eye.
And shouldn't our audit then say that we do have all of our money collateralized?
If you go back down a few pages here, just bear with me, scroll down. So, no, you're going too fast. Scroll down. The custodial risk.
Okay, Jim, good point.
Yeah, somewhere in here, there should be something in there that mentions that piece of paper, you all. So, and I see a typo there. I apologize for Maine to Vermont, but somewhere in that piece of paper right here, there should be something that references that agreement with the Federal Home Loan Bank. So, note 19, I'm told. Anybody want to scroll to note 19?
Where would I find that?
Just keep going down there in order. You're on note 4.
Note on the left-hand corner.
Yeah, you're almost
There
there.
we go.
Note 16. Note 16 still. Long note 16.
And thank you, Ron, for bringing up that.
There we go.
It does say Maine on page
Yeah,
30.
no, I apologize. Damn word and replace. There you go, right there, though.
But that's only $3 million.
Yeah, well, it was like 2.5. I think that wasn't collateralized. So they have a standing
our
letter
point.
for 3 million.
That's what we're asking about. What about the other?
No, it's
No, this
this
covers
is
the
the
2.5.
additional.
Okay. So the $300,000 there and the $300,000.
That's 3 million.
Sorry, 3 million. 3 million. But on page 40, it says the other 2.4 million were uncollateralized. Is that covering that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And what may be good, Josh, Connie, is if you kind of, Connie, if I'm just thinking for this workshop, and especially if it's going to be attended by members of the public, taking your general ledger, Connie, and kind of following it to your trial balance, and then following it to our audit trial balance and following to the worksheets. I could see like 2 slides, Connie, that we could kind of walk it through, what you typically would do and take to town meeting, and kind of in another column, do the math, and gets it to the governmental wide activities that has all of the funds in it. I think that might be a good exercise, you guys, to walk so that we can see, that everybody understand where the math comes from. And may I suggest, if anybody else has any other questions, we could use that workshop to better go over those in detail as well.
And Jim Feinstein, our treasurer, has suggested we send the questions in advance. I'm totally
Yeah,
happy.
please. That'd be great. That would be great.
My last question is really for Connie and Josh, because we do take the management letter seriously. And so we are looking at a policy tonight regarding one of your recommendations. The other one is what could be called segregation of duties, which we know that it's a problem that we have one person taking care of all of the accounting systems. And so it's concerning that it isn't in our letter again this year, because it was in our letter last year.
Well,
And
go
so-
look at the second comment. I think that speaks exactly to
That's
what we're
what I'm
trying
saying.
to say.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That
Okay.
it's, the second comment is the
Oh,
same.
okay, I'm sorry. Yep. Basically, it's happened twice now.
Yes, yes. So I think, and Josh and I have talked, and I know that he's working on getting Duncan to get taking on some of these responsibilities, which I think is great. And so it is important. And like I said to Jay, when we met, that's the most important part of the audit is the management letter.
Mhm.
And understanding when you read that segregation of duties is what keeps you from experiencing fraud. And we've read across the state that fraud has been going on. So I just feel like that's something to pay attention to.
I think it's well said, and I think that I always say the two most important comments in government: cash is king and best practice makes cash king. So I really think that those are two things to live by in your world, and absolutely, it's a point well taken.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And then I just want to bring up that we had this conversation at a previous meeting that we wanted to see things like the adjustments made more frequently than at the end of the year. And that was a note in last year's audit as well. And there was some reluctance to do that. And I think we need the select board, because I'm going off, needs to look at that. Any point in time when you're looking at your financials, you know those numbers are real.
Mhm.
You're not waiting for the end of the year to make adjustments, because you can't make a correction at that point. If you want to look at it midway and do a mid-course correction, those financials need to be done. Those adjustments need to be done.
Mhm.
That's all I
agree.
have to say.
Right, because if it's all funny money, if there's a whole bunch of adjustments, maybe
It's not accurate.
it's not accurate.
And we started doing that. Instead of waiting to the end of the year, we're doing, like all the reserves are transferred over at the halfway mark. There's no point in doing it at the end of the first quarter because there's just too much up in the air at that point. But there are some things that are being done, like the water 30-70 split, that's being done quarterly. The reserves, we're not waiting until the end of the year. So there's a whole bunch of things that are being done quarterly and semi-annually now.
But not everything. And what we're saying, it's important to look at each one of those pieces and not wait till the end of the year. And anything else on this?
I look forward to the workshop. We need to work on getting that scheduled soon.
Thank you so much, Ron. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, look forward to it. And yeah, if you guys want to send any other questions by that you may think of as a result of this conversation or future conversations, I just think that would be a better use of everybody's time if I can kind of like see in advance and, and take care of those, and any other questions you may have. I just think it would be more productive.
And I'll be meeting with Connie next week, and I can look at some of those, ask Connie to pull some of those large numbers, just
That would be
get the
helpful.
detail in those accounts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hmm.
Moving on to the capital plan. So
Everybody
public
take care.
Thank
Thank
you. Okay,
You need a motion to move to adopt.
yeah, first order of
I
business
don't
is
think there's any actual. Oh, wait, you're moving on. You don't need an
nope,
action for the audit.
No.
No.
No,
Okay,
that's
that's
right.
what
Just
you're
need to
asking.
schedule a workshop. I
Okay.
move to open the public hearing to consider adoption of the fiscal year 24 capital plan.
This is David. I'll second.
thank you so much. Any discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Hard I.
And June, I. So now we are asking for public comment on the plan, and the plan was in the documents online. Do you want to, are we going to pull that up? So this is a tool to help plan for purchases of capital equipment, buildings and infrastructure. The plan builds on the direction of capital expenditure that was started with the FY23 budget and is continued into the FY24 budget. Specifically planning to use unassigned funds, restricted funds, reserve funds, and money raised from taxes to pay for capital equipment without taking loans. There's still some likeliness that we'll need loans or bonds at some point for larger projects. And Connie we've reviewed this before, and Connie has made some red line or blue line in this case changes based on what we reviewed the last time. Connie, do you want to talk about these changes?
The blues are just information that we had to add that were not in there the last time because I didn't have the date that we are going to warn the meeting for.
So, and then I think
And
just
down here, it's, yeah, I think I had actually talked to Bart about that and Josh. In the index, we felt it was better that we break out each spreadsheet where initially I had them as spreadsheet 1 through 6.
Okay.
to make it a little bit more descriptive. And I think the only number that we changed was, let me find it. In,
Was it
yes, yeah, there it
Right
is.
there.
the police capital reserve was off by a year?
Yeah, so let me see if I can switch this by, of course, what I want. There we go. So essentially, this negative 1517 was over in 26, and then the 26 number was in 27, 27 was in 28. So Connie caught that and then just moved them over one cell. So everything that it references on the police spreadsheet continues to be accurate. We just had to change where they were on the summary spreadsheet.
And we're also given information on interest paid on loans over the past several years and interest that will be paid in the future.
That's more, it's not really part of the plan, but it kind of is a good informational document.
It kind of gives you an idea of why we need this plan,
Correct.
how it will save us.
So yeah, let me pull loan interest. Yep. So I can let Connie speak to this, but this looks back at what, the last 5 years or so, since 2006. So-
Well, it goes back to 2006. What I did is I picked a point in time where a loan started that we still have. So the fire truck that we purchased in 2005, we started paying on that loan in 2006, and we still have that loan. There's been many other loans, as you can see, they're marked either complete or active that have come up since that time. But since 2006, between the town and the water department, we have spent $740,000 in interest on loans.
And that could be spent doing a lot of good things in our capital plan. So, thank you. Any questions on the capital plan? Select-board? Any questions from the public on the capital plan? Okay, then. We are looking for a motion. Oh, we have to
Close hearing.
close the hearing. We need a
And then
motion
you
to
can
close
have a
the hearing.
So I move to close the hearing to consider adoption of the FY23 capital plan. This is David. I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, please state your name and vote.
This is Jay.
It's Jeff. Aye. This is David. Aye.
Bard, aye.
June, aye. The hearing is closed and now we can take a vote on the capital plan.
I move to adopt the fiscal year 24 capital plan.
June, this is David. I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
Jay,
Jeff. Aye. David. Aye.
Bard, aye.
And June, aye. So we have adopted the FY24 capital plan. Thank you. And we caught up on time. Okay. follow up on discussion with TD Bank in consideration of recommending to the treasurer to purchase certificates of deposit. So on February 9th, Josh and I and Jay and Jim Feinson, our treasurer, our town treasurer, and Connie and John Weston from TD Bank, along with Ron Smith, who we just met from our auditing firm, met to talk about our banking, because it had come up a couple of times, why we weren't putting our money in a sweep account so it could make more money. It was a very good meeting, and it seemed like a very simple answer for a question we've been asking for a while. John Weston provided an overview of the banking, including the interest rates. The interest rate will increase from 2.5% to 2.65 in the next month. And the interest is paid on the full investable balance of the account. There's enough of a minimum balance in the account to offset fees, so there are no current fees assessed to the account. Now, from what he said, this is considered what I think they call the NOW account. Is that right?
The NOW program.
The NOW program. And so, and he did explain, as we talked about already, that all the funds are collateralized by a third-party insurer. So what he explained is that vehicle is doing more for us than putting the money into a sweep account. He says sweep accounts right now are paying about 1.85%, which is lower than what we're getting in the program we're in right now. And also, if there's a sweep account set up, the balance in the main account would drop below what's necessary to keep us at a minimum balance to avoid paying fees. So there's a lot of reasons not to put the money into a sweep account. And so I mean, Jay, I was there as well, and Jim, I felt like it was very informative. We got a lot of good information, and I think he's kind of willing to, help us out with whatever we want. We did talk about electronic banking, and because it seems more efficient. We're sending checks now. It seems like every time we meet, there are payments that have been late, and we know that the Postal Service is responsible for some of that because things have been a little delayed. And so there's still a lot of conversation that needs to happen if this were to be put in place, because right now Jim signs off on all the checks and he approves everything. So we'd have to put a system in place to have approval of verifying
the EFTs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the one of the last things we talked about was putting some money into CDs, because those will earn more money. And right now, John Weston provided the rates. At that point, the rates were for 3 months, 4.25%, 6 months, 4.5, 9 months, 4.5, and 12 months, 4.4. And so we talked that 6 months would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got some information from Connie on, what we could put in. And she said we could do a $750,000 in the 6-month CD and $250,000 in a 12-month CD. I'm thinking, we were told by John that we could put up to 1.75 million into CDs and still be okay with our minimum balance to offset fees in the checking account. And I think if we started looking at, since 6 months is the lowest time frame where we could get the highest interest, if we opened a 6-month CD every 2 months for the next,
We just kept it rotating.
Yeah, for the next every 2 months for the next 3 months, we will have a CD come due every 2 months.
Yeah.
Right.
June, is this a typo that the 12-month CD pays less than the 9-month
No,
CD?
It's not.
Okay.
No, isn't that interesting?
It is. So why would we want to do that?
No, we wouldn't.
So, well,
Because then it's secure. After
Right.
6 months, the interest rate could go down. And so you're at least locked in at the 4.4 for 12 months if the rates go down.
Could you tell me what a sweep account is? I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know that acronym.
Yeah, so there are a lot of organizations that their money doesn't sit in a checking account. It sweeps to essentially like a savings account that earns interest, it earns more money. And then when you're paying out of this account, it sweeps back. And then when it gets to a certain level, it sweeps back. But there are charges for that.
Mhm. And provided we keep with the now program, provided we meet a certain minimum annual balance, we don't have any fees and we get a very nice rate of return. Although I like the CD idea too. One thing we did talk about in that meeting that June went by and mentioned is electronic banking. Mr. Weston kind of explained to us that there's two types of electronic banking. There's pulls and pushes.
Mhm.
And a pull is where you basically, it's like I let Hanover Insurance pull from my bank account my premium each month. And that has its risks, as some towns have found out to their misfortune. Sometimes it's even impossible even if you authorize certain entities to do those pulls, people who are criminals who really know what they're doing can spoof being those entities and get a pull through anyway. So long story short, the consensus was don't do that we would do pushes, and the pushes would have to be initiated by somebody on our end. We would still need controls. We'd still need people reviewing them. We couldn't just say, oh, we'll catch it on the statement.
That makes sense.
Anything else you want to add, Josh?
I think
Jim?
covered it.
Okay. So we've given Jim the guidance to go look at CDs. Any thoughts on amount and timeframes?
So with all of this discussion on, fund balances and, so I'm not an accountant and so some of it goes over my head, to be honest. What my concern would be is that we have enough money available for us when we need it.
And the banker is telling us we do.
Well, can I just make one?
Oh,
Just
what?
the delineation between that. So,
Yes.
so the banker is saying that we could use up to 1.75 million and still have enough minimum balance to avoid fees.
Oh, right.
But, so that's where county put together, let me just share a screen, to try to look at, well, what are our actual cash flow needs for the rest of this fiscal year and in the next fiscal year, which don't necessarily line up 100% with where we would avoid fees. Let me make sure that's gonna pop up. So we started to look at where are we at right now with cash, and this includes reserve funds as well.
Right.
What tax revenue do we still have to come in? What non-tax revenue are we still expecting for funds 10 and 11? And 11 again is highway. Then we said, well, we're going to assume some amount of delinquencies, so we won't collect the full amount of taxes. We'll have maybe 100,000 delinquent. We're going to have to pay education taxes of 3.3 million. Budgeted expenses that are still left, about 1.2 million in general and about 900,000 in highway. So then that gives us sort of a cash projection at the end of this fiscal year of about 3.3 million. We are still expecting 374,000 from FEMA any minute now, which could be now, or it could be 6
Right.
months from now.
Right.
Unfortunately, I sort of joke, but we've been waiting for a while. Then we look at our cash balance projected at the end of this fiscal year, including that money, we're up about 3.7. And then just a note that of that, about 2.7 million is tied up in reserves and also accounted for in the 1.2 million in ARPA. So that's sort of what we would have on hand if we wanted to put away some of the reserve money. Then we wanted to look, so that would kind of take us for the next 5 months, essentially. If we want to look beyond that, we wanted to look at FY24. So this might look sort of dummy in and out, but wanted to start with what's our total tax and non-tax revenue, and not including education tax. Like, we're looking to raise 4.5 million in the entire fiscal year. If everything goes perfectly according to plan, we'll spend all that in the entire fiscal year. And I did that just because it helped me make sense of where we're at here.
Mhm.
Then looking at budgeted restricted funds to be used, we've said we're going to use $500,000 in restricted funds. So that's going to come out of our restricted area.
Mhm.
And then we have a budgeted use of reserve funds of 234,000. So I wanted to add those in to say that our projected cash balance at the close of FY24 would be about 2.9 or about $3 million. That also includes the reserve funds that are in there and the ARPA money. Assuming using 500,000 unassigned and 234,000 in reserves. So that gives us a little bit of a look kind of going forward. Connie then from that said she would feel comfortable to use 750,000 in the 6-month, 250,000 in the 12-month. There is probably room to do more if you wanted to. And the worst thing that happens, I think, is if we get into a jam for some reason, we have to break one early, or that would probably be the worst thing that would happen. If all of a sudden we had a crisis, we'd have to break it early, as long as we don't pull it down so low that we can't meet our regular expenses
Right.
without a crisis.
What happens if we cash it early? What's the penalty?
I don't know what the exact penalty is.
It depends on the bank, like it's different for every bank, so we'd have to ask that question. Connie?
Josh, it was what, the 6-month and 9-month that were the highest? Because I think I put 12 months down incorrectly.
Yeah.
So I guess where I'm going with putting the biggest chunk in once is John did kind of suggest that the rates may go back down. So if we do some every 2 months, we could end up having a lesser interest rate on the money 2 months from now and then 2 months from that. I looked at, whatever our cash balance has been historically over the past several years. And the spring we're always doing very well in the spring. It doesn't start to get a little tight until August. So that's kind of why I was thinking put the biggest chunk in 6 months right now. It'll be finishing by the end of August, which is just 2 weeks after our first tax installment. We're in a different position now than we were 6 years ago. 6 years ago, we couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm thinking staggering every 2 months is because then something's going to come due every 2 months, and it doesn't have to be like put all of ARPA in this one. You can kind of say, we're going to say that 30% of this one is ARPA and 30 of it is highway and 30 of it is whatever. But if we did 500,000 in March and then another 500,000 in May and another 500,000 in July, then we have something coming due every 2 months. And we can make a determination. Do we renew that at the end of 6 months, or are the interest rates not where we want them to be? And then it goes back, because it is, possible that those rates could go below what we're earning in our now program. So that's why I'm thinking doing it a staggering, then once we get 6 months down the road, we've got something coming due every 2 months.
I like that idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, why
It'll be
not?
tight.
Well, we're then
Well, it'll be highly dependent on when we start spending the ARPA fund. So I'm not saying we're taking ARPA money and putting it in there. We're taking a specific amount of money.
right.
But I'm trying to be aware of when are we going to start spending it? Well, if we're not spending, say we're only spending a couple 100,000 between now and October, that's not a big deal. There's plenty of cash flow still going on in our checking account because of all the reserve monies we have and because we're not spending much of that reserve money in fiscal year 24. But if the plan is we're going to be doing a really big ARPA project, like in September, that would put us really tight with our operational expenses.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Jen?
So on the subject of ARPA, I would guesstimate that we're probably going to have a list of projects to recommend to the select board within a month. We've got some things that we're pretty certain on. Now, are we going to have a proposal for all 1.2 million? No, I don't think so. But there's no rule that says we have to spend it all up front. We've gotten some very good proposals with numbers from the Recreation Committee and from the Transportation Committee. We're waiting on hearing from the Transportation Committee as far as whether we got a particular grant. If we got the grant, that'll make it one thing. If we don't get the grant, it'll make it another. And we've also, we've all heard about Linda's request to digitize records. We know approximately how much that's going to cost. if you total all that up back of the envelope calculations, we're still looking at having about $500,000 not spoken for, and I'll be going over these tomorrow night. So I would say that it's possible that the recreation dollars at least could be spent, sometime this year, or at least get the ball rolling. The transportation projects, the money might sit in the account for another year or so until we're ready to break ground. We're talking about the Bridge Street Better Streets project, and we're talking about the East Main Street sidewalk project. And so both of those are things that would be appropriate for ARPA money, in my opinion, and that we wouldn't be spending in like 2 months. We'd be spending it sometime next year.
Right. And in the East Main Street project, didn't Revy say like a sidewalk project could take 4 years? And we're less than 4 years out from when that deadline is to spend ARPA money. So that's a decision that should be made pretty.
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Part of the reason why it takes so long is some of the funding. So if the money, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I was following that is if we want to use that money for the upper portion of Bridge Street and we're not going to seek a grant, then that I think accelerates the timeline.
Yeah.
Because then we just basically have to get final design and construction,
Got it.
and then away we go. We could, I would think if we committed to that like tonight, we could be doing that next summer. I think that would not be beyond the realm of possibility.
Won't
Right.
commit to that. It's not on the agenda, but.
No, but I'm just saying that.
But I
think-
mean, in terms of,
Having funding
we
in
do
place.
realize that the
Okay.
clock is ticking, and that at
Right.
least in that regard, we do need to get the recommendations to you.
Got it.
And as far as the town center committee, we haven't come up with our final request. We're still working on that. It will likely be several $100,000 in
Right.
that range.
And we've got that, yeah.
At the very, the very quickest we could deal with that would be, we're projecting potentially a bond vote in November. And if we were lucky, we could do construction next year. But that would be, there are lots of towns and lots of schools doing construction, so.
So it sounds like we're okay with investing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at too.
In relation to this question, I don't see us spending this money quickly.
Okay. Bart, did you have your hand up?
No, it's really that. I'm struck that it feels like we're a little ahead of ourselves talking about how we're going to spend ARPA money when we haven't
Right.
decided how we're going to spend ARPA money. So I'm a little
Right.
uncomfortable with that part of this
Oh.
conversation.
Yeah, we're going to make recommendations, and the select board can then do what they want with the recommendations.
Connie,
Forgot to put my hand down.
okay. All right, so we are looking for a motion of amounts and
So were you suggesting $500,000 every 2 months from here out for
For
three,
six-
three?
For 6
rounds?
months.
for 3 rounds, 6 months. So March, May, July. And then something comes due every 2 months.
And so we've talked a total of 1.5 million, but in 3 chunks.
And,
Yes.
and in 6 months.
Increments.
Okay, so can somebody phrase that in a concise motion?
I move to recommend that the town treasurer move $500,000 of town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit every 2 months.
Second,
From
Maybe specified March, May, and July.
March, May and July.
So we're very clear.
Right.
Let me pull that motion back.
Okay.
I move to recommend that the town treasurer move $500,000 of town funds into certificates of deposit with 6-month durations in March, May, and July of this year.
So
Second.
500,000 each
Yes,
month for those 3 months.
in 3 months. So it would be 3 6-month certificates of deposit. $500,000 CD opened in March, a $500,000 CD opened in May, and a $500,000 CD opened in July.
Are there any questions?
No.
Comments?
So what?
Oh, we need a second.
I did second.
Okay, thank you.
As long as
So
I'm not
what this
sure.
will do is each of those 500,000 CDs for a 6-month period at 4.5% will earn us $11,250. So that's not nothing. That's.
That's not nothing.
so that's,
It's better than putting a cigar box under the bed.
Yeah.
Great.
um,
Okay, we're looking for a vote then.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Connie.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you should not make motion for all three deposits and you reassess to find out what the interest rates are each time. So in other words, in saying we're going to do this, well, what if those interest rates drop next month?
Right.
So I think it'd be better, like every 2 months, I can get John to give me amounts and we can be prepared to do that of the first of the month that you want to do it in.
That makes sense.
So,
So just make one motion for the first one we're going to do tonight.
And then a future agenda item for the end of April.
Okay.
It does, I mean,
Do I
just,
withdraw my motion?
well, no,
Well-
wait a minute. Could we
Yeah.
amend it to say, after evaluating the interest rates each time? And because what you don't want to do is forget that you have to come back in May, in,
I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. I'd suggest either leaving this motion and then we're not
Coming.
locked into it. If 2 months from now we change our minds, okay. I forgot what I was gonna say.
because you
I-
could
I
always,
have a suggestion.
yes,
You could add language at the end, something like comma, subject to review and approval in real time by the select board prior
That's-
to
trying to say,
those
Yeah.
decisions.
subject to review
Mhm.
by the board. Connie, do you have another question?
I'm just wondering what Jim thinks.
I think if the interest rates go down in the future, likely the return on your now account is also going to go down. So I think since we're sitting on excess cash, I think it's fine to have a review, but I suspect that you'll be following this program going forward because you're seeking not the 4% interest rate, you're seeking the best interest rate. And
Right.
I will guess CDs will have that 2 months from now.
Yeah, CDs should be higher than this
Yeah.
account, the now account.
And are they,
Now account, the now program.
No.
and are they, are the CDs insured?
Yes,
Sort of, yes.
they are insured
There's the-
because everything in the, everything we have there, as we've been told, is insured.
Okay.
everything above $250,000 beyond the FDIC insurance is insured or guaranteed
Under the
separately.
3 million.
Great. Okay.
Okay, any further discussion?
So are we modifying the motion or leaving?
I pondered.
Read the motion.
God.
We
As
wanna make
modified?
sure- Yes, as modified.
Okay, so the motion that was moved and seconded was I moved to recommend that the town treasurer move $500,000 of town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit in March, May, and July of this year. And the suggested amendment would be subject to review by the board.
That sounds good.
So
That sounds good.
so
Second
I would
again.
like to amend that to subject to review by the board. Sounds like Jay just seconded the amendment.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything further?
So are we voting on the amendment or that
We're
was,
voting on the motion that was just made.
okay, because that was a friendly amendment that you.
Right, the motion was amended.
Yes, it was amended, but it was a friendly amendment. So that,
Mhm.
if you accept that, then we don't need to vote on it.
On the amendment.
Right, so we're just voting on the main motion at this point.
Right.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Robert's,
please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Hard, aye.
You and I.
Good, we're making money for the town.
Okay.
Well, we're being responsible.
Yeah, that's 33,000.
Okay, so consideration of placement of radar speed feedback signs. Josh, I'm gonna have you go through this since you've had the conversations.
Sure. So the conversation has been, where do we put the 4 radar speed feedback signs that we purchased and received a month or so ago? The board was fairly certain we wanted to put a sign on either end of Cochran Road as you enter Cochran Road from the Round Church area and as you enter from Route 2. But we didn't know exactly where we wanted to put that on the road. So I reached out to Cysar Polly from CCRPC, and he visited and has come back with the following recommendations. So there we go, it's sharing. So this is as you're entering from the intersection with Bridge Street, Thompson Road, and Huntington Road.
Do you want comments as you go through it, or do you want to wait until the end of your?
Do a brief overview first.
Yeah, okay. So this is essentially the first speed limit sign that you see as you're entering from that intersection. The round church is here off to your left, a little bit behind. To look at it on a map, you would come through this intersection here. You would start to see the radar speed feedback sign where the blue teardrop is, which is directly under a current 25-mile-an-hour sign. He also recommended adding another 25-mile-an-hour sign further down, which is a little bit, I think, just off the map here, to reinforce the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Cy really kind of keyed in on how it kind of becomes a bit of a blind curve down here, and you really want to slow people down in this section, as well as when they first enter into where the highly residential density is. Then on the eastern side, this is as you come over the bridge. On your right-hand side, you'll recognize Bombardier Meadow. We've in this area just past Duxbury Road. There is a speed limit sign up here, which is closer to the bridge. But in Cy's opinion, as you come over the bridge, you come down the bridge here, you will see this sign flashing back as you're traveling through this section here. Realize, okay, I got to slow down to 25, and you'll know on that stretch. He also recommended that in addition to that, we add these chevrons here that really call out the 90-degree turn that you're about to come into. And these would be double-sided, so you would see them traveling this direction as well as traveling in this direction. So you'd see those signs there. And then another thing that he noticed was as we get around the corner, this is over the bridge. I think Dugway Road is down in this area. He again was keying in on how your line of sight as far as what's coming and what's around this corner is very limited. So he's recommending another 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign in this area. So that's my brief overview and
Thank
questions,
you.
comments.
Jay,
So we had also discussed, and I mean, I defer to their superior knowledge, but we discussed maybe putting one before you get to the Stone Corral. Did he evaluate that and say that was not a good idea?
Yeah, I asked him a bit about that, and it's interesting. His first recommendation was actually to put this sign down here more. And when I saw that, I got on the call with him and said, well, let me explain kind of where we're looking at. And really what we want to do is we're seeing people coming off of here and they're showing to speed up right away. And we want to make sure that we slow them down. So I want to get that closer to this intersection. And I think that he's recommending putting that in here because if this is really our main focus, let's get everybody that's coming through here, whether they're coming off of Bridge Street or coming through Huntington. And let's get them right away. There could still be some speeders in this area. Then the good thing is we can try this for a few months and we can move it if we want to.
Now, we bought a total of 4 of these signs,
We
right?
do have 4.
So we're only discussing 2 of them.
We're only discussing 2 tonight because I still need to put the temporary speed feedback signs once the weather breaks on Route 2 to get the data that V-Trans will then use to let us know if we can put the speed feedback signs as you enter the village from east and west. But they won't really let us do that until we're through the snow season and then there's no interference with plowing.
One other place I think had been mentioned was on Heinsberg Road as you're crossing the town boundary and you're heading to the drag strip in front of your house. Didn't we at one point, there's rules about where we can put these. It has to be to speed transition, right?
So that's the V-Trans rule. It has to be the speed transition. So that's why on Route 2, there's only like very defined areas we can put them. I think on a town road, there's best practices, but there's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. So for instance, this one here isn't actually a transition. You should be doing 25 on all 3 of these
You're right.
roads.
Okay.
I did talk to Cy about speeds that are like 35 miles an hour or over. And, you know, he said they do end up becoming less effective because you're traveling at a higher rate of speed and you're not, you know, the 25 mile an hour is sort of where they're most effective. Doesn't mean we couldn't put it up on Heinsberg Road. I think we could still look into that. But he was
I know that the residents on that part of Heinsberg Road have
Yeah, it
appealed
goes
for
fast.
something to be done.
Yeah.
well, and I think once we get towards spring, there'll be construction again on Route 2, and which will affect,
Slow things down a lot.
yes, yes, it will. So maybe
This summer.
at that point, you could be gathering data on this side, but
Mhm.
you've got some time to kind of figure that
And,
out.
and we also have the portable sign too. So once we're done gathering data on Route 2, if we want to move forward with those signs that are pole mounted, we could bring the cart to Heinsberg and see, does that make a difference?
Mhm.
Yeah. Is the bridge being done this summer too?
I don't know. I'd have to double check their project.
Okay,
Um,
I thought when they,
I think you might be, but I don't want to say yes
Okay.
and not be
Okay.
right. So I don't,
Which bridge?
the bridge by the
By the
fire
fire
station that goes over.
Oh.
Way
yeah,
to
yeah,
nine.
yeah.
It's gonna begin this summer too.
I thought-
Might.
Don't-
I
It might.
thought
But
it
there's
was
gonna be
by-
so much, it's not just the bridge. I mean, they're gonna be raising the level of the road there by like 7 or 8 feet.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not a casual undertaking.
But why wouldn't they do that at the same time they're resurfacing?
This is the AOT
Or
we're talking about.
Re-engineering.
Guys, you're right. It should. all
No,
be
they're just
done.
paving it.
Okay,
Okay, so,
so we are looking at
So
two.
Jeff, the questions still?
Yeah.
yeah, I had a couple of questions. On the Cochran Road West End, you have the sign right in the shade of that tree.
Mhm.
It's solar powered. Right, so that's gonna be, since that, the battery will have a difficult time charging.
Mhm.
So you might just want to move that to, a place where there are no trees.
Didn't Ben say that this technology only requires daylight, not sunlight?
But you still need.
You still need some
you still
sun.
Need some sun.
I think we
6
could
feet.
probably move,
Right.
we could probably move that pole like a little forward out of the trees, what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way
Yeah.
we're not, and we'll have to look at what Pete needs for separation. I think there's a driveway right here.
I think this might be one of the problems with the sign that we already have coming from the other
Okay.
direction. Is.
Yeah,
is
because
it
it's in
maybe shade.
perpetual shade.
Yeah, so it's not charging enough. My second question was on the other end, on the east end of Cochran Road.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering. Is this a problem? So where you're coming from there, you're coming from Route 2, you've made a turn, most likely. I mean, people don't zoom down Stage Road and cross Route 2 without stopping. So you're starting up there, you hit the railroad track. Okay, and it's hard for me to believe you'd be going 40 miles an hour, even if you wanted to, right there.
I think the cones have,
Yeah, I mean, I walk there all the time and I mean, I drive there. I'm going down the road all the time and we kind of have in our head just mentally from years of driving, a road that looks like this should have this speed limit. You don't need, sometimes you just realize you're automatically going the speed limit without seeing the sign. Unconsciously, that feels like it should be a 35 mile an hour zone. That's what most people drive.
Remember,
And
you're
they-
coming off Route 2, you cross the railroad tracks, zoom over the bridge, you're accustomed to the sound and feel of 40. And then
Right.
You
And
come down
people-
that hill.
Yeah, I can't speak with evidence that people have been going off the road to people's houses there, but I don't think the chevrons would be a bad idea. And the other thing I like about this is if it turns out that it's not having an impact, the data will have the data.
yeah.
I'll be very interested in seeing the data.
And I know we did use the cart there last spring. And I know we have some data and I forget exactly what the average speed was, but it was higher than 25. It
We
was
had a
closer to
select board
30, if
meeting.
I recall, maybe 35.
We had a select board meeting out there at Bombardier Field, and in the middle of the meeting, a pickup truck passed 2 cars right where it says 25 on the pavement there. And the car that was, the lead car was going above 25 when the pickup truck passed the 2 cars.
I would suspect that these signs won't solve that problem. There are gonna be people that are just crazy anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this seems like a reasonable, another technology that I've heard is these radar signs tell you what your speed is. And presumably will slow them down. So it doesn't give you kind of baseline information of what's going on there before there's some kind of calming measure, the calming measure being these radar signs telling how fast you're going. You can, my understanding is that there is technology where you can have stealth radar data collection.
Well, those ropes, those cables they put across the road.
Actually,
they-
I think there, it's just.
I've heard of that. too.
It just reads it. And gives you data on what the
Yeah.
baseline is.
Yeah.
Which, might be useful to look into. So like, when we get complaints on East Hill Road, for example, this past week, to understand what the baseline is. And then you could understand whether these, have an impact on that baseline. And when we finally get to the speed tables, we'll find out what the impact will be on that. But that might be something worth looking into. I know other towns have that kind of technology.
How is that different though from just laying the cables across the road that measure how fast you go over the two cables?
Because you don't even know, so if you go.
Oh, if your point is you
Yeah.
see the cables, but, right. Well, and I guess one other nice thing about radar is people who have radar detectors will see them being illuminated by radar and will slow down. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a big piece of this for me is data.
Yes.
And so we're gonna be collecting data with these signs, a cleaner baseline is, getting data without any calming measure.
Hmm.
But, I support doing what we can at the moment.
All right, now we're looking for a motion. Lisa,
Yeah, so I was wondering about, I'm just trying to understand this, did these have the flashing lights on them? I thought that was part of this.
They have capability. They don't have to be put on.
Yeah, they
But-
do.
Oh, okay, well.
I mean, that's one of the big selling points.
We want the blue
Right.
flashing lights. Yep.
Okay, and so it would be the 4 of these all on Cochran Road, because then I heard people were talking about other places.
Right now, 2 TBD.
two
Oh,
will
okay.
be, yeah, we're voting on 2 tonight for Cochran Road, and then the other 2, we're waiting to get data regarding Route 2, because we need the state's approval for using them on Route 2.
Okay,
And we already have, 2 on Cochran Road going that direction.
Yes.
Yes.
but those are not necessarily collecting data, right? On the one on the west end.
They are, when they're working,
They
they
are.
are.
Well,
Okay.
okay,
The one on Jericho Road isn't working either.
But the one as you're going east, right before like Wheeler Lane, that is a data collector.
I think they all have a
That
chip
way.
in them.
I would love to get that data. If it's been there and it's been on, couldn't we see that data now?
Yes,
Yeah,
because you mentioned to Ben that you would go and get it.
I will. If they tell me how to get it, yeah, I'll go get it.
You need a ladder.
Yeah, I think that's where Ben wants to get them
It's
moved
gonna be
to.
delivered on the 9th.
So they're lower.
underneath, so we
Yeah.
can just walk up and
Okay,
get
I'll
it.
follow up
not
with you
have-
about going out there and
Sure.
Like the natural disaster.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion.
I move to approve placement of radar speed feedback signs, speed limit signs and chevron signs as presented.
There's a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, I.
June 9. Okay, consideration of setting a hearing date to amend the traffic ordinance included in our packet is a draft update of the traffic ordinance. We talked about this at our last meeting. And we were asked to postpone it till this meeting so that they could get accurate mileage. But they decided not to use mileage at this point. So I'll let you talk about this.
Okay.
Josh?
Yep, let me share screen here. Do we have Kevin or
Kevin is
somebody?
here.
Okay, good.
And John's here too.
So Kevin, I can go whichever way. If you want to walk people through it, if you want me to walk through it, what's your pleasure? You guys did all the work on this. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to let you walk through it.
Okay, so first of all, my thanks to traffic parking committee for coming back with some suggestions. We'll start with the suggestions on Cochran Road and Dugway Road. So on Cochran Road, they're proposing no parking from the intersection with Duxbury Road, which is right about where we were just looking at with radar speed feedback sign, down around the corner to the Edmonds Bridge, which is the bridge over the Huntington River, except where parking has been explicitly designated in the area off the traveled portion of the road to the south side of Cochran Road, immediately to the east of Edmonds Bridge. It might be helpful if I can pull up a map. It might be helpful just to sort of show what this means. And I know the parking committee had some nicer maps, but let me just start here. There we go. So this would say no parking from Duxbury Road, either side, around the corner, out here to the road, the Edmonds Bridge, with the exception of this pull-off, where you can get completely off the travel portion of the road. So it would be signed appropriately, where there'd be no parking from here to bridge. And then we would sign it here to say, you are able to park from here to the bridge off the travel portion of the road. And that would then be backed up by the ordinance. On Dugway, they decided to stick with the mileage markers because that seemed to be accurate and make the most sense. So this is on either west side, on the entire west side, which is the uphill side opposite the Huntington River of Town Highway 7 or Dugway Road, from mile marker 0.5 south of Town Highway 3, which is Cochran Road, to mile marker 2.2 south of Town Highway 3, which is Cochran Road. So we're looking at about a 1.7 mile stretch of Dugway Road where parking would be prohibited on either side. We'll go over one other suggested change that this sort of came out. This, and I want to be clear, this wasn't, I think, an official suggestion from the traffic committee, but a few members reached out to me afterwards to say, we did talk about this a bit, and would this make sense to remove this portion here that says no person shall park a vehicle on a travel portion of a town highway, which is our practice. You can't park on the travel portion of a highway. We also have this, it says, or within the town highway right of way. So that would effectively, if you got off the travel portion of the road, but you were still in the right of way, that would allow a ticket to be written. And that's not the way I think we've ever enforced this. So I talked with Pete, our road foreman, and Ben, our interim police chief. They both agreed that removing this would make the most sense with the way that we enforce this. I also talked with our attorney to make sure there wasn't like an unintended consequence that we were overseeing, or there's some legalese reason why this was written this way. He couldn't think of any, and agreed that taking that out would allow it to be enforced the way we have been enforcing it. So we're essentially proposing 3 changes this evening. And then we also wanted to look at the fee for the fine, I should say, for parking. Right now it's $25. And the committee did some work, and I'm sorry, I forgot to include this in the packet, but it was included in the last packet, to look at what are neighboring towns. So Wilson is $50. These go by the state statute. UVM is $80, Burlington's $125, and we're here at our $25, which is included in our ordinance. So wanted to have the board consider increasing that fine to be more in line with surrounding towns and perhaps act as more of a deterrent. So the action for tonight is to finalize where the board would like to be with those 3 changes plus the fine, and then set a hearing date where we would come back and hear public feedback on those changes, and then you would adopt the ordinance at that point.
Yes, Jay.
I note that you have to be present to get the 105 or the 59.
That's my understanding from talking with
And
them.
so the surrounding towns that have 105, 59, is that true for them too? I assume so.
That is my understanding through our interim chief.
So we don't know from this, but Waterbury, Heinsberg, Jericho are charging for you're parking illegally, but you're not here ticket.
I'm not sure how they're enforcing it.
Okay.
Kevin, did you get any sense of that when you did this research?
Chuck has actually been running with most of this. This is the result of his research. So actually I don't have a clear answer for you.
Okay. I would like to see it raised to at least 50. I think 50 is a good round number, but I defer to the others.
What does the star mean at the bottom? That state statutes, no local ordinance and or enforced by BSP?
So I think that's indicating that they don't, well, I'll let Chuck speak to that. Chuck, since you made this, I think I know the answer, but is Chuck here? Maybe Chuck's not on the call.
Yeah, I don't think he did make it tonight. Actually, I wasn't expecting to cover this tonight.
So I think, oh, sorry, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting to cover this tonight because I think Chuck wasn't able to make it. So he'll be able to.
I think the idea is that they don't have a fee in their local ordinance, so they would sort of default to what the state statute is.
Got it.
But since we have a $25 fee, we kind of default to our $25 fee. So I think it would make sense to discuss increasing that so that when our officers are writing a ticket, it's a little bit more of a fine and not just the cost of parking. So
So
I
it
think
would-
some people view it.
It would be $50. We're talking about raising it to potentially $50 for the violation of the town ordinance. Got it.
We've,
And the other
changed
two
it.
would be the same.
The other two would not change because they're what's in.
Okay.
Bard.
Oh, Barb,
So I support Jay mentioned 50, but I only posed the question. It looks like UVM is 80. Do we want to put this out to bid? I hear 50, 51.
I think 50 is the minimum. I could go higher. Jeff?
So is this, are we gonna be including whatever we come up with in the ordinance?
Correct.
Okay, and we, after the public hearing, we can change it as well, right? Based on public comment,
Correct.
okay?
Yeah.
So what we put in tonight is not necessarily the final word.
right.
Right.
It's just,
It's what-
our placeholder for the time being.
Yeah, it's what I think your best suggestion would be, and if you hear a lot of feedback that no, it should really be 75, then you can do that. I think if it was proposed to be like 500, you might want to rewarn the hearing because that's a significant change. But I think if it's within, $50 to $100, that would be reasonable to change it during the hearing.
So I'll call at 50.
Barb,
I think that's prudent. I think we call it at 50 and it's subject to tweaking at public hearing.
It's 100% increase, so that's something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yes,
Okay.
John.
No.
It sounds like it's on helium.
I'm hearing you.
We heard
John?
about 3 syllables, John.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Okay, just as far as the change to remove the no parking in the traveled way, while the town is considering changing this ordinance, just be aware that right now you can't park at St. Mary's Cemetery, you can't park anywhere on Doug Grant Road, and as I understand it, you can't park on Church Street in front of the Congregational Church because the pavement is in fact part of the right of way.
So, John, let me just restate what you said, because you broke up quite a bit, but I think I got most of what you're saying. What you were saying is there are currently parking spaces, like lined parking spaces on Church Street next to the church that people are using. And technically with this wording about you can't park within the town highway right of way, they could be getting a ticket because they're within the town highway right of way. So removing that language makes it so that those are actually legal parking spaces, which is, I think, what we're trying to accomplish. Did I accurately catch your comments?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted the select board to understand. Thank you.
So I've actually heard this comment before, that, on streets in the village, if you park on the street, sometimes our police officers get upset about that.
Mm.
And in some cases, that doesn't seem like it's, that's not our intent here. Our intent here is for different places, not necessarily the residential streets in the village.
Well, yeah, I think our intent is sort of like, as long as you're off the travel portion of the driveway of the road, or you're in a parking stall, like on Bridge Street or in Church Street, that it's clearly delineated as a parking area. You're fine in those areas, but if you park just on the street, you're on the travel portion of the road, and this wouldn't change that, but if you're off the travel portion and you're still in the right of way, you technically get a ticket with the way this is written,
So on-street parking anywhere in the village would not be allowed,
as it is right now.
as it is right now. And is there a way to make a distinction between, village residential streets as opposed to Dugway? Which is a completely different thing.
So you would have to, I think then, you'd have to go in here and say, it's legal to park on the left side of Church Street anytime on the travel portion, if you wanted to specifically call out individual streets.
And as far as, so there's the ordinance
Mhm.
and then there's enforcement.
Mhm.
And, the enforcement. Just because you're doing that doesn't necessarily, just like you're speeding. You speed, you don't necessarily get a ticket, you may get a warning. So enforcement is discretionary.
Mhm.
So, we might want to talk to to police department when we have one. About discretionary enforcement of this ordinance. Our particular concern, at least the ones we've heard most over the last 6 months or a year or so, are Cochran Road and Dugway.
Mhm.
That's our major concern. Other places around town, we have not heard complaints about.
But those Richmond Congregational Church people, they get kind of rowdy.
Well, I mean, it would be important to allow parking.
I park there every Sunday, so I'm making fun of myself.
It's important, and those are lined, aren't they?
They are lined, yep.
Mhm.
And it's not just church people who park there. Sometimes I'll pull up and go, wow, there's a bunch of people at the church. I go inside, there's nobody. That's just people who live there use them too.
Okay,
Okay. So again, these are questions or issues that might come up in the public hearing that we might address
Mhm.
after the public hearing.
want to talk about the timeline?
John's got his hand up again.
Yes, John.
There was a relic.
Oh,
Okay.
Times
okay.
past. Sure, I can talk about the timeline. So if the board moves tonight to set a public hearing, we would set the public hearing for March 13th, which would allow us to publish the notice in next Thursday's paper, giving us the 1 week mandatory notice to make an amendment to an ordinance. On March 13th, the hearing would be held. If it is adopted at that evening's meeting, there would be 60-day waiting period for it to go into effect, which would effectively make it effective on May 11th, assuming there's no appeal brought to, or a petition brought to stop that process. So that would be conveniently just in time for swimming season, which is sort of the main focus of this.
Yes. Any further comments or questions? Okay, we're looking for a motion.
I move to set a hearing date of March 13th, 2023 at 7 PM for proposed amendments to the parking section of the traffic ordinance.
This is David. I'll second.
Thank you, both of you. Any further discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
June, I.
Josh, just a procedural question. Do we need to set the location or just the time and date?
I don't think we've ever included it in a motion, but it'll be here at 7 o'clock
Okay.
in a regular select board meeting. That is a good question. We might want to add that in the future, but I don't think we've ever had it.
All right, moving along, consideration of endorsing a letter supporting project-based tax increment financing. I'm gonna let you talk about this. And I know that this was this talked at about
Yeah.
water and sewer as well?
Mhm.
Okay,
So this came up from Vermont League of Cities and Towns a few weeks ago. There's been a bill that has tried to make its way through the legislature the last couple of years for project-based tax increment financing. Typically, tax increment financing is for very large projects that involve multiple properties. This would be allowing that type of financing to be focused on a single project rather than multiple projects or one larger project. VLCT reached out to towns that potentially have projects that could benefit from this type of financing, and they identified the Gateway project as one here in Richmond that could potentially benefit from this. The way it essentially works is if you have a house that's say $300,000 and you're in the Gateway, and then the water line is constructed and now your property value goes from 300,000 to let's say 400,000, you would still pay your municipal and school taxes on that $300,000. But any taxes that you would have paid to the school or to the town on that extra $100,000 of increased value would go back to paying off the bond. I think
Well,
it's 80%.
80%.
Yeah. And I don't know where the other 20% goes. Those are details that I didn't fully get into, but might go back to the state. But it doesn't go to the town. It doesn't go to the school. It goes back to paying off that bond.
and it's not paid for by the taxpayer.
And it's, well, it is paid for by that property owner. So they're still paying the same amount of taxes, but they're essentially helping to pay that bond down quicker.
Oh, so
'Cause
they are paying on the one, on the,
They are still paying on their full
on the
property
increase.
value, but the portion of taxes that would be applied to that increased value goes to the bond.
got it.
So they're still paying the same amount, but the town would only get the tax revenue for the base amount, and same with education. And then everybody, in our case, it would most likely be a special assessment district, so that all those future users would also be paying a portion of the bond payback. So that would stay the same, but they would essentially accelerate what they're paying back on the bond, so that would get paid down quicker. And if their property values went up, they would essentially, if we didn't have a TIF district in place, that they would still be paying the same amount of taxes just to the town and to the school. So to be clear, the letter tonight is to send to the representative and senators for Richmond in the State House to say that the select board would be in favor of this bill passing. It is not a commitment to use this type of bill. Should it pass, we would have to go through a process to determine if it's something that we want to use for that gateway project or any other project in Richmond. But until it passes, it's simply a tool that's not available to the town.
Questions?
So, I'm not crazy about this idea, to tell you the truth. I think it's creative and it's useful and for, particularly for city projects, for larger municipalities than we have. I know Burlington has used it, and it's been used in larger cities in the state. What VLCT, as I'm understanding their letter, is they want to kind of extend this concept to smaller towns. I'm hard pressed to come up with a project that this might be applicable for, other than, water sewer line extension. And I don't know how comfortable I am using this financing for that purpose. So, I'm not convinced at this point that this would be a good thing for Richmond. At this point myself.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
Well, I respect your right to your opinion, but given that this would basically be transparent to the people who live there, they're going to be paying the exact same taxes anyway. This is simply another way to get the people who live and are benefiting directly from the project to contribute, and that's less that we have to do through bonds. It's simply a way to get it paid back faster. It may be that this would primarily be used for things like water and sewer, but I don't see that as a bad thing. And just because we support it, it gives us a tool in our toolkit. It does not require us to execute it. And if I understand the proposed bill, I'm looking at the VLCT page on this project. The recommended bill would approve up to 10 project-based TIF districts between January 1, 2022 and December 31, 2026. It would not by no means be guaranteed that even if this passed, that we would be allowed to do one. So I think, it costs us nothing to say, let's have this tool available. Even if we don't want to use it, we don't have to use it.
Thank you, Jay. Bart?
Similarly, I think of our consideration of this as a tool. Tools can be used for good or bad. Like, you ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I don't hold it against chainsaw.
That may be the first time that's been brought up at a Richmond Selectboard. Minutes.
So I think of it as a tool used prudently. And I think in this regard, we're thinking of our town, other towns, present and future. There might be something down the road. And I appreciate concerns about what is immediately, like including, does this mean we'd use that for water and sewer into the gateway? And I think that's like saying, would we use a chainsaw for this project? I think it was just, if it's the right tool in the right place, right time, and enough of a process to go through it, including presumably voter approval, that I think it's just, I think we should say, vote for it or support its approval at the legislature, passage at the legislature, because it does offer another tool. And I'll say TIF districts have only worked for big cities disproportionately. You got to have like a big enough area that's got enough light that it makes sense. And it's sort of I'll remind people of all the frankly evils done in the name of urban renewal over the last 60 years. In the name of like, oh, we got to do it big. We got to do the scale. We got to wipe all this stuff out and make it ready for something else. So I think of this as a more surgical tool than the blunt instrument of it.
Thank you, Barn. Yes.
Yeah,
Jan.
I just want to add, I don't think at this time anybody's contemplating using this to build a large dome stadium on Tilden Avenue.
Yes, yeah.
So a couple of examples that I don't know how it would play out. So say we extended at some point in the future, we extended the sewer line out to Riverview Commons. Okay, and presumably their property values would go up, all of them there, and but this wouldn't cost them anymore. It would just, their property values would go up, and so therefore their taxes would go up, but we would allocate it differently. And I wonder if that would be true if we, found some site within the village for an affordable housing complex. Would that be an appropriate use of this? So would it be, if it was on a greenfield site and they built something there, then it would go from $100,000 to $3 million? Is that, say
Hypothetically, sure.
hypothetically, and is it that increment there? that
Yeah.
Would,
The taxes that they pay $3 million, the taxes on $3 million. We would say, what would the taxes have been $100,000? That would still go into the town and the school coffers, and the 2.9 million would be 80% of the 2.9 million would be used to pay for the project.
Until it's paid off.
Right.
It's paid off, yeah.
Right.
Pay down the bond.
Because the long term, part of this is it's a way of getting you over that hurdle. Because in the long term, then it reverts to the 3 million is 3 million, and it goes into the general coffers.
so if currently we are not allowed to do any kind of deal like that
Right.
by statute. So what did we do with Borden Street? That we keep, that keeps coming up. I don't understand what, they got some kind of.
There was a pass-through grant. The grant could not go directly to the Champlain Housing Trust. It had to go to us, and then with the intention of we then handed it over to them. But it was a pass-through grant from,
Federal government, wasn't it?
right.
Ultimately federal money.
And there was supposed to be money that would came back to us.
That's a
Yeah,
whole
that's
other
a whole
story.
other, that's,
So
yes and no.
So that's another tool that was used for an
Yes.
affordable housing project.
Yeah,
Another financing tool of some sort.
yeah.
Okay.
Any further conversation? All right, looking for a motion.
I move to approve sending a letter in support of project-based tax increment financing to Richmond's legislators.
June, this is David. I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
I'm going to use a technique that I've heard other select board members use when they're uncertain about which way they would vote. I'm going to abstain.
This is David. Aye.
Bard, aye.
June, aye. And the motion passes.
And now we can all get on the phone to Jana and say, please.
Exactly. Okay. Consideration of using ARPA funds to pay for presentation to the select board by Abundant Sun of the data collected in a survey of Richmond employees and volunteers related to the welcoming and engaging communities cohort. So I had mentioned to Josh putting this on here only because I know that this work that we're doing for DEIB is supported by ARPA. But I know now, after talking to Jay, I know that projects are coming forward, and I just want to say, I mean, we have money in unreserved funds we could spend on this. It's only $1,175. And I thought, well, this money does fit it, but we have other funds that we can use. I just wanted to put it out there to say, by the way, we have ARPA money that we should be spending. So it is, we are paying nothing for the course that we're going through. And we have asked her to help come and present at a select board meeting because I think she is better equipped than me, at least, to do that with all of the information. And so we'll do some prep work with her. And then her time to come to the board is $1,175. So
I'd prefer to have it paid for out of general funds and not out of ARPA.
Hold on.
I agree, and I made comments earlier that we're a little ahead of like committing money from ARPA. That's item one, I think, just in terms of process. And item two, 1175 is margin
Yes.
of error in our audit. And I think we have a combination of things like vacancy savings. It's small enough that I don't think it has budget impact that we could afford it. And I think we should do it, but not use ARPA funds, as Jay suggested.
So would you still need a motion?
No,
Or we just?
no, if we're gonna use general funds, we don't need a motion. Josh can approve that.
Good to me.
Sounds good to me
And
too.
so we have asked her to report report out at the March 21st meeting.
Tuesday 20, yes. we said the
March 21st.
Yes,
So
you're right.
we'll
Thank you.
work with her and then she'll come to that
And
meeting.
June, you're more than welcome to attend as.
Well, I'm planning on attending since I was part of this whole program. So I will be at that meeting.
I have a punch card. I get a punch for every diversity, equity, inclusion meeting I go to. I'm this close to filling it up.
You're driving to Bennington tomorrow?
It's not gonna happen. I have too many meetings tomorrow that I have to sit in.
Good.
I was gonna do it just to, show support for Susanna and company, but no, I'm not doing
We
6
have a
hours.
Middlebury meeting coming up too.
Bennington.
Oh, we do. What is that?
I'll have to look at the calendar. Okay.
Well, if we'd only been able to get a room, we'd be. doing
Moving
it here.
along. Consideration of approving certificate of no appeal or suit pending for the 2022 grand list. So this is a statutory requirement and it was, we don't really
No
have,
appeals, we've had no appeals. So I move to certify that there are no appeals or suits pending related to the April 1st, 2022 grand list.
This is David, I'll second.
thank you. Any discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
This is Jeff, I.
J.I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
June, I. Public comment and parking on Route 2 near the traffic signal. So we got a lot of feedback that Duncan pulled together. Thank you, Duncan, for doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It was, yes, it was very interesting to hear what people had to say. So we'll open it up for comment.
Well, should we kind of reiterate what the comments, it was what? Like 17 to 5?
Was it that? I
Yeah.
thought it was fewer than 5 that said
Share the screen. So this is,
No, I think it was 5.
to
but,
keep it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, 17 to 5. Yes,
Yeah, I think we should at least show it for the MMC TV watchers.
yeah.
so, I did find this persuasive, although there were, I am sensitive to, parking within the commercial district of the village. We don't currently have enough parking,
Right.
and this means taking, a couple, 3 parking spaces away.
It could mean that. What this does gives us data to go to the state. We still have to get approval from the
This
state.
is what we want to see happen, so this is what we're asking to see
This is
happen.
what we're asking.
And so I'm sensitive to that, although, the comments back, I think, were persuasive to me.
Mhm.
So, I would be in favor of that. Of asking the traffic committee, whatever it is.
Well, now we need to go to the
Um,
state,
I
right?
think you're right. Ask if there's anybody here to make a comment.
Is there anybody here from
The public.
the public that wants to talk about this?
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because
Yeah.
we did get. oh,
This is Karen Yagi. I have a comment.
Yes, Karen.
I do some senior activities at the church each week for the last several years. And I think it became a more serious problem with someone with a very large red pickup truck started parking just to the east of the driveway and the doctor's driveway. Before that, with smaller cars, it was much easier to spot, but that person seems to prefer that spot. And the truck is, I think, may have started this whole conversation.
Yes, I think you're right about that. But there was a trailer attached at some point as well when that when the building was being worked on. And I think that was what sort of raised the concern.
Someone wondered if that truck is a tenant. Belongs to a tenant.
That is a good question. I don't know. Yes, Bard?
As somebody who lives not far away, my perception it probably is a tenant. But regardless, it strikes me that any of the larger vehicles, pickup trucks, pickups with cabs, vans, work vans, sprinter vans, do create a visual obstacle. And a lot of the day it doesn't matter, but during rush hour, early in the day, late in the day, there is just a lot of activity. When you're looking around, it's really hard to see everything going each way at once. It doesn't help that some of the people tend to speed through there as well. So it's probably a combination of things. And again, if we're trying to be pedestrian friendly, while I'm reluctant to give up traffic spots, it seems a few traffic spots, and we could revisit it later if it doesn't solve the problem. I'm convinced just by walking through there is some evidence of a problem on top of what other people who see it day to day have said. So I support personally, based on what I've seen, heard, and read, that we should at least try removing the spots and see how that plays out.
Thank you, Bard.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd like to ask the state.
Okay, so
I've seen lots of close calls.
Question, just to clarify, what would the board like to request? Just looking at a map here, this is where the traffic light is. I think currently parking sort of happens in front of this building here, which is the apartment building that's been recently renovated. There's the entryway to the doctor's office. Then there's room for maybe 4 cars if you squeeze them in here in front of the doctor's office. This is the driveway that's garnered lots of question because this is the exit for both the doctor's office and the Holy Rosary Church, as well as the entrance for the Holy Rosary Church. And then there's some more spaces up here. So do you want to see a no parking from the stoplight to like the walkway, or maybe within 30 feet of either side of the driveway?
I think the request was really just in front of the Richmond
family.
Medical and Family Health, and then the apartment building. I'm wondering, because we do have some concern about not having enough parking, if we took the parking out just from in front of the medical building, if that gives you enough of a sight line, cars coming through. And I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm sitting here. I have no idea.
This is Bard. My instinct is that is worth trying, because if you picture standing in that driveway and look right and left, if you're looking right, it's on the other side of the road, you tend to be able to see it. It's really people coming from the left when you're either going into their traffic or across both lanes that you can't see them. So what if we propose in front of the medical building, which then gives you a line of sight? If you think about the angles, instead of it having an angle of 80 degrees, you'd have an angle of 130 degrees or something. You'd have a lot more sight line down the road there.
And some of the comments talked about if you've got someone kind of slowing down because they want to turn into Cumberland Farms, they're going to use that no parking area to pass to go around. And by keeping some parking in front of the apartment building, that will avoid that. And it gives some parking for the businesses.
So essentially nothing from driveway to driveway. Keep
Essentially
this
from driveway.
area open.
Yeah.
You can put a couple cars in there, go for it. But yeah, that's not your line of sight. Okay. We can come back with a letter the board can approve sending to V-Trans, and then their traffic engineer will review that and come back with any comments, and then they'll go to their committee hopefully by May.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion of records retention policy. So the Secretary of State's office allows for supporting financial documentation such as invoices, receipts, vouchers, etc., to be destroyed after an audit. Included in our packet is an email from the Secretary of State's office with links for more information. I did click those, and it's very clear that you can destroy documents. And so one of the things that Josh did is he got a sample retention policy, which I think we should be talking about. And right now, since COVID, because everything's being scanned, we have everything electronically. I think that's a good practice. And I don't know that we ever want to get rid of electronic files.
No,
Like
we
I
should
can
always
see
do that.
cleaning out paper files, but I think
Yeah,
electronic files we want to keep in perpetuity.
I agree.
Yes, Jeff.
So one challenge that I've had, I can't believe I did this, but the question came up. This is when I was with the school district. The question came up as to how much money did we save by heating our high school with wood chips as opposed to fuel oil? Okay, so that's a good question. Not so easy to document, right? So what I had to do, and it took me quite a while, I had to go down into our vault down in the basement and dig up the fuel oil bills for at that time the school district was here and they were storing stuff down there, but we do the same thing. And go through those files in order to get it. I would not be able to do that through what our warrants are. It would be really difficult to go through the warrants and find all of our fuel oil bills for every month over a period of time. You know what I
Brings up a
mean?
good point.
But
You know what I mean? That's
yeah, but I
And
think,
similarly, the Carroll Bounty request.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
so, and Connie, you might want to jump in and answer it, but I think I have the answer to Jeff's question, unless you want to jump in.
And by the way, it was $1 million. We saved
Wow.
$1 million over 10 years
A lot.
of fuel costs, but that took quite a while.
So I'll try. You could go into Nemrick and take a look and see, okay, if your fuel oil company was born, you would then look and say, okay, well, how much did we pay them and when did we pay them? And then that would give
That's
you,
not it. So that,
but then that would give you where the invoice is located. So then you could pull the invoice out of the electronic packet. Right? It might actually be quicker than trying to.
oh, I don't think so.
But
So-
why isn't that it? Why couldn't you pull what you paid born and then what you paid for wood chips?
What you have to, in this case, and it's actually is good practice to keep track of your fuel bills, for any building. That's good practice. And when you're doing that, the operable number is not how much you paid, it's the volume that you bought, because the rates change all the time, right? So you want to know, how many gallons you bought in any given year and what the price was, but the gallons is the operable
Yeah,
thing that you're doing. And the only way you can get that at the moment is off the invoice. And unfortunately, fuel dealers are not required to
give you that
give you that information because they're not regulated, right? So, I don't know the answer to that.
I think it could be the same as going into the basement and going through files. You could get what Josh said, the list of what file to look in, what electronic file to look in, and then you go through and look at the invoices as you would be thumbing through a file.
So I would ask Connie, so if I did a Freedom of Information Act request of all the fuel bills that we paid over the past 10 years, I'm not doing this. And I'm not suggesting anybody do this. But if we were to do that, do you think that you could do that? Or, I come in every periodically and want to know like how much gasoline we bought for a cruiser, or whatever, and then again, it's volume. But
right now, we don't have to keep those files forever.
Right. So
And
right,
if we don't-
right now, we would be able to go back 5 years
Mhm.
and there would actually be a file that would be, for Bourne's Energy, and you could pull that out and you could go right through that. I think Where it would get a little more complicated is, let's say we had 10 years of electronic files. So you would go back to 6 years, then you'd have to say, okay, when did we pay Borns? And then you would have, because we wouldn't have it sorted, we'd have it sorted by meeting essentially.
Then you'd go through the warrants and find Warren.
Yeah, yeah, it would be, yeah,
Yeah.
but it would all be in one. Connie has it all in one file already. So you could say, okay, March 15th, there was a bill, you pull that up, you print out the March 15th bill, and then there was another one, you get the idea. So it'll get a
So I
little more
have-
complicated for this.
I'm really glad I'm retired.
I have two different ways. One, we can go to the general ledger and look it up by budget, under the budget number that heat was charged to. And the other would be, say we know Patterson. You go to the vendor and I can pull up the vendor list for every bill we paid for Patterson. Again, both of those are going to tell me what day did this bill get paid on. And you know how we send you the PDF copies of the invoices and the warrants?
Mhm.
That's by seeing when it was paid, then all I have to do is click on that PDF, scroll down to that invoice, and I have everything I need on it.
And yeah, so that's what your concern was.
Yeah.
To look at the invoice. Yes, Jen.
My
Jay,
concern,
sorry.
I'm no Jim. My concern goes back to the lack of coding of our projects in our Nimerick software. Because we have not been doing coding, and be able to just run a report that says, show me everything expended on project code 8025A since 2010, we've had to literally go back and search through paper records to try to satisfy that request, right?
Mhm.
So until we start coding, and we've got several years of coded data, I'm less than sanguine about saying the audit's been done, let's get rid of it. Because then we're in a position of that data's gone.
Mhm. So right now, we are keeping everything paper files for 5 years. We could change the policy and say we're gonna keep it for 10 years, and we would just keep more boxes
I'm not
downstairs.
proposing that.
No, but I'm saying.
I'm just saying, let's not go all the way to
but-
0 years.
No, and we're not doing that.
Yeah.
As far as coding, June and I had a conversation last week, and I do have a contact that we can connect with at Nemrick and ask those questions to figure out, is there more we could be doing? Because so if we have a big project, so say we've got something like a Bridge Street water line replacement,
Right.
we will create a special fund project for that. So any advertising, engineering, construction, all goes to that. So we are able to go back and look at that. It's the projects that sort of, I'll say, kind of creep a little bit, right? The first few invoices we got from Williams Hill, we didn't realize we were going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars. So it was like anything else legal where, okay, we answered that question, and maybe a few weeks go by, a few months go by. So what we've started to do is, at least on legal and engineering, is write in a description. And June and I are gonna follow with them to find out, like, is there a code we could add to that we could actually sort by? Connie was following with Nemrick. She thinks that she has somebody that told her we might be able to sort by that description field, but we're still waiting on feedback from Nemrick on that. I know that June's worked in systems where you can't really sort by descriptions because it's sort of a text box, not a hard coded box.
Right.
So we are trying to follow up on how can we take some of these smaller projects that start small and mushroom and keep them tracked.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, we'll work on that.
So,
Yeah.
I think this, part of this discussion is relevant to the town center design. Because within the town center design, storage is a big deal. Trying to figure out enough storage. And it seems to me that, we need to keep files for a year, as I understood the retention, the statute. I think Connie does that in her office, which is fine, so that we can plan for that. And files that are the invoices and that are older than that could be stored in the basement. In where we store now, it's below the vault. It is secure, but it's not flood proof. And it could get flooded. But that's not necessarily a huge loss. It's a little loss to lose invoices for 4 years. Bummer, but it's not like, it's not like, precious, priceless historical documents.
Right.
you know, so thank you. So this is informative for the, you know, the town center design to think about it. We had talked about how valuable, I mean, 20 years from now, nobody's gonna have any paper,
Right.
you know. I will. You know, for anything, you know, and we really should get to that point, because it's just it's
efficient.
wasted space,
Yeah.
but we're not there yet.
So it'll be a future agenda item.
So do you want us to come back with a policy to vote on that would have 5 years, 6 years? What do you?
Five.
I can go with 5, just not less.
But electronic files, I think, should say in perpetuity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Why not keep them?
Yeah,
Yeah, why
Okay.
not?
Right.
Yep, that makes sense.
certainly not destroy them, erase them.
Right,
I don't
Right.
know.
You know, that's a common thing, when you change, governor or president, so lots of files get destroyed.
Even
Or
though
take
it's
them home.
illegal.
Or you take
Well,
them out.
Can-
Say,
I will tell you that records retention policies in state government are extremely complex. Here's one example. We, as a state, are obligated by federal law to expunge Medicaid claims records that are 10 years old or older. You can't keep them. You are obligated to permanently erase them.
Yeah, and I'm in a position right now of having to write code to purge TRICARE records from a customer after 5 years. You know what TRICARE is. After 5 years,
I'm on tracking.
yeah. So we've got to purge the claims, the referrals, and then finally the enrollment. It's got to be gone, and we have to be able to prove it's gone.
So it's, you know, the idea of you keep it forever, it seems like a good idea until suddenly a number of years go by and you go, what? Why do we have all this stuff? So eventually you might have a more refined policy than keep it. But not for today.
Right. All right. Discussion of renewing leases with tenants in the town. So, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So 2 years ago, after the school moved out and we had some vacant space on the 3rd floor of the town center, we entered into leases with MMC TV, the Historical Society, and the Senior Center for 2 years. 2 of those leases were $1 a year. That's the Historical Society and the Senior Center. And then MMC TV, I don't have it in front of me. Where did I have information? They pay, with my overview.
They pay market rate,
Yeah.
minus 15%.
Yeah, so they pay closer to market rate, yeah, minus an allocation that we put in there for consideration of what they do for the town as far as recording. At this point, we put in select board, water, sewer, DRB, and planning commission. They actually record and post a few more meetings than that in practice. But the idea was to kind of give them an in-kind donation for what they don't charge us for. In each of these leases, there's a clause that if a tenant would like to renew, they need to send us a letter. And then we have, I think it's 30 days to respond after they've sent us a letter 90 days out. So we're about 90 days out. These all expire in the spring. We've gotten letters from all 3 tenants. I wanted to start the conversation with the board to see, is there anything in the leases that we would like to look at changing? Do we want to look at the amount that we're charging MMCTV? One thing that jumps out to me that I know we put in there is if we do undertake a major renovation of this building, we as a town have an ability to put them on notice to say, you can't be here for a certain amount of time or for a long time, depending on those changes. I would argue we keep that in, considering the movement we're making with the town center and potential changes here in the next couple of years. We might want to look again at MMCTV's amount. Right now, I think the post office is in a situation where they're still paying the same amount as they were a couple of years ago. They kind of go in 5-year blocks and then it kicks up every 5 years. So we could look at what they'll be paying. I think it kicks up in September. We might want to look at that amount and then sort of recalculate square footage based on what we'll be charging them for the next 2 years, essentially.
Yeah, and I was confused because it said outlined in orange is the total square footage of 1,007.8 feet, but their proposal was 807 78 feet.
Included some of the common areas.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they are the common area that they are,
Like the
that's what I was confused
kitchen,
because
yeah.
it says the total square footage. I thought it said did not,
not including the kitchen.
not including the
So
kitchen.
I think that did they initially ask us for less?
I think they did.
And then I think we said, well, this whole corner kind of makes sense.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember the exact back and forth. Is Angeliki on the call or anybody might remember those specifics? But
I think it's just
Um,
me.
okay, and that might have been their current square footage too, for where they were in the other building before they moved here.
Okay,
Monthly rent, annual rent, yeah,
So
I think that might have been where they were at.
okay.
Okay, so full disclosure, I'm on the board of MMCTV. And if I'm not very careful, I'm gonna wind up in charge of it. Um, and in terms of like, everybody line up, we need a volunteer, everybody else steps backward. Something that I don't think everybody knows, they are funded in large extent by contributions from Comcast.
Mhm.
Cable cutters are causing the numbers to drop precipitously. They're not sure that they were gonna get funding from Comcast in the long term, that they may just cut it off. So we agree that they provide a very valuable service. I mean, they're indispensable from the standpoint of keeping the public informed. Right now, I would really like us to not raise the rent, and this is where I'm having to, full disclosure, I'm on the board. I'd like to see it go down, but I don't know if that's going to fly at all. I just would really like to see it not go up.
Yes, Jeff.
So I'm extremely happy with all of the tenants we have in the building right now. And I was gratified that with all of the letters that we received from the existing tenants, they're really happy to be here. This is a good marriage. To me, it feels like a good marriage. And I really value MMCTV. I was aware that, their funding source might be reduced in the future. It's something we'll keep in mind as we're doing the redesign of the building. But, most of their space, if they went away for one reason or another, it could be reused in a different way. It's not like the police department. It's a much more specific and design heavy use.
Mhm.
So I'm happy with all of these, where they are right now. I would note, just for the people listening in, that the total rent that we will be getting almost $100,000 from the post office a year, and MMCTV is another, what,
15,407.
15, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we did get more from the school when it was the school department when it's here. But we're making good use out of this space now.
Yeah.
And I think it will be better. We will be making better use. So I'm real happy just the way it is.
Great. No decision tonight, right? Because
You don't have to, nope, we can. Unless. Yeah, I mean, if everybody's sort of happy with where they're at right now and the rents in each, we can update them with sort of dates essentially and bring it back for approval at the next meeting. If minds change, you don't have to approve.
The one
We can make
question I would
make
have about the
adjustments.
post office is, yes, it was my recollection, our original lease was for 20 years. It was a fixed price for 20 years, which was interesting, and we got, at the time, we got top dollar for commercial space, for 20 years. I think it was $10 a square foot, 1990s, which is pretty good at the time. But they understood that because it was a long lease, and so, it would be higher at the beginning and then, maybe lower than market rate then. And then we would have automatic renewals in 5-year increments. We must be close to.
it's coming up this fall, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the document here, but I know I reviewed it last week. Their current rent, I think, is good through the end of August, and then it bumps back up in September. They sent me the renewal document, gosh, about a year ago, I think, or at least this past winter, I
Will
think.
it be another renewal?
It's another
for 5
renewal for 5 years.
Great. So
Yeah,
longer we can keep
then
them,
it
the
goes
better.
to that next tier for 5 years, and then that might be the last 5-year increment that's
It might
baked
be.
in, and then we had to renegotiate probably. We got 5 years to think about that.
I have been told by, one of we've had many postmasters over the past
Yes,
few
we
years.
have.
Mhm.
But one of them said, it worked in many different post offices around the state as interim postmaster. Said this is the best one he's been in. As far
Sure.
as the space goes.
They do have a,
Because I
good
never
amount of
thought it was
space.
that great myself, and I would like to make it better, but.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things about our post office. There is something in BT Digger about the town of Heinsberg where they're getting mail like 1 day a week.
Mhm.
And over here, I get mail every day and my packages are not delayed and they've got 2,000 packages piled up. It's like, what a difference one town makes.
I wasn't getting the mail every day for quite some time.
Oh,
there
well,
was that,
where a bunch of them were all sick for
I
like
was
2
gonna say,
weeks.
there was that
They didn't
period,
have.
they had
didn't
like
have-
one
But
mail.
since they got everybody back, my mail's been, I mean, every day they're pulling up to drop off my endless Amazon purchases.
And I think we have a new semi-permanent
Yeah,
postmaster, a young woman who
Mm.
grew up in town.
yeah,
Okay,
she's
let's
very
get back
good.
To the
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah.
Okay, gardening.
Gardening, update on forming a gardening committee, Jay.
So the idea of a gardening committee, I'll keep this brief because it's late. Came out of the ARPA committee. It was one of the suggestions that some town residents made that they would like to see community gardens expanded. There were also several mentions of basically town beautification. And we do have a small amount of community garden space in Richmond, but not as much as many surrounding towns. And it's extremely popular. And like you look in Essex Junction, there's a very large community garden on West Street that is always full and there's always a waiting list there. I think that if we expanded community gardens, if we took some space from the far end, perhaps the Volunteers Green, or maybe some space up at Brown's Court, or, we'll figure it out. I think that we could easily fill that space with town gardeners. I think I'm up to like 7 people expressing interest now. I got some more emails today. And what I've communicated to them is, I'm very glad for you expressing your interest. Thank you so much. If we decide to pursue this, we'll need to come up with kind of a charter for the committee.
Mhm.
And we'll also need to have you submit applications as we do for any town committee. But we'll keep you posted. And that's kind of where we stand.
Great. Okay, thank you. Reminder of public information meeting on Saturday, March 4th at 9 a.m. at the town center to discuss the FY24 budget and water line bond vote. So it's on my calendar.
It's on my calendar.
So you can attend by Zoom. That will be posted on Front Porch Forum as well.
Yep, we'll post it in all the normal spots. It's also posted in the town report. So the information's in the town report, but we'll send it out to all the normal channels a few days in advance as well. Mostly wanted to put on here, make sure the board remembered it's Saturday morning. And also to inform the public again, you can attend via Zoom, you can attend in person, it'll be recorded, you can take a look at it later.
You think this room will be big enough?
I think we'll be probably fine.
Probably.
To give you an idea of we had done in the past when we had in-person meetings, when we would do it up at Campbell's Hump, during a select board meeting,
For all 3 people. that
and there
showed
was
up.
like 3 people.
Yeah.
There is no voting at this one. This is
Right.
just information, chance to ask questions. There's no amendments to be made to the budget. That will all happen Monday night. But part of it's a statutory requirement for Australian ballot items, especially the water line vote. We need
Yep.
to make sure that we're having that. So we'll talk about the water line vote and we'll talk about the budget, and then we'll talk about it all again on Monday night.
Yeah, but I don't think it would hurt for any of us to get on Front Porch Forum and say, I get questions all the time about what's on the budget, what's this, what's that.
Mhm.
Take an hour out of your weekend, get a cup of coffee and stay in your pajamas and watch the meeting and listen in.
Just turn your camera off, please.
Yes, well, unless you got really stylish pajamas, but sometimes people kind of tune out just the formulaic, an upcoming meeting is happening, but they might read something a little more personal. So I have every intention of being a little bit obnoxious that way. It doesn't come hard to me.
And to be clear, Monday night at 6 o'clock up at Campbell's Hump
Mhm.
is going to be our official town meeting where
Yes.
people will be voting on the budget. One
Yes,
way or the other, there'll be another, I'm doing this for more than the audience in the room here. There will be a similar presentation on what the budget is and a ability to
Oh.
ask questions.
Mhm.
yeah, ability to ask questions. Are you going through the budget at that meeting?
On Monday
Monday
night,
night.
usually, yes.
Yeah, so I don't go through line by line.
Like you do for the for the Saturday meeting.
Well, it'll be essentially the same presentation, the way I've
Okay.
done it, and so it'll be kind of some overviews of sort of big numbers in the budget, like what's the budget going to, what's your proposed tax rate, how are we gonna handle the reappraisal, but let's assume the government stays the same, what will your tax be if this budget passes this way, what's your increase over the last year? We'll talk about what unassigned fund and reserve funds are, where our balances are, how we can use them, how we have them used in this budget. We'll talk about reserve accounts, unassigned and restricted funds. And then we'll talk about reserve accounts, talk about historical balances, where we're at now, use of those last year, use of those proposed for FY24. And then I'll usually go into a bit of a sort of major changes in the budget that sort of affect everything. So one of those examples might be all employees now are paying 10% of health insurance. And then we'll go into some specific items. So in the police department, we might talk about, well, we're not going to replace a car in FY24, or we are going to buy a new truck for highway. And I'll kind of hit some of those highlights. So there's the bigger picture stuff. And then open it up for questions. So if somebody does want to ask about, a $1,200 line item, well, we can dive into it. But I'm not going to go into that level of detail in the
Right.
overview. It usually takes 45 minutes to an hour for me to go through the whole thing.
Right.
But I think it usually gives people a pretty good overview, and then we have however long questions last. And on Monday night, there is also the ability to make changes to the budget before it's voted on, which has happened in the past, or it
Right.
can be voted on in whole. And Monday night, there is no virtual option. We want to make sure we're clear about that.
Right, because
because
it'd be impossible to do the vote.
you can't vote virtually. Yeah,
Right.
you have to either be Australian ballot or actual in person. So Monday night, you got to be there for the
Right,
budget.
and unlike the Australian ballot, where the entire town has all day long to vote yay or nay, it's just the people who show up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
and I always have to stop and remind is, if I recall, and I may be horribly wrong, they can vote to amend the bottom line, but they cannot vote to amend line items, right?
No, you can.
I remember a few years ago that when the school board was still voted publicly, people were trying to strike individual teacher positions. And were told by the moderator that while they could amend the bottom line, they could not strike an individual position. So if they struck exactly the amount of that teacher position, the school board could then just redistribute the money. It would just be the net amount was being reduced.
There's a political imperative. So, it's informative. If there is a concern by the people who are in the room at the time to want to eliminate or add something, a raise for the town clerk, for example.
It's happened.
It's added to the bottom line of the budget, but if we didn't give it to the town clerk, both we'd lose the town clerk and we can.
Right, that's my point, is they can amend the bottom line, but they can't directly say it is for, they can say it and we can go, yes, we understand that, but they can't compel us. Although it'd probably be stupid to ignore their wishes, but so that's the thing. Clint's on top of this. He knows what he's doing. But if somebody were to get up and say, I want to strike the money for this, I've seen people argue for over an hour about $1,200.
Right. And keep in mind, I was gonna do the math just now, but we don't get we haven't gotten a huge percentage of our population on Tuesdays. We'll see what we get on a Monday night, but I'm gonna encourage people to show up because we are deciding on the budget and we need as many people there from our town to voice their opinion as possible.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
This is a litmus test of does going to Monday night make a difference? And if the people who pushed for it need to
Show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll text Roger.
And just to be clear again, and on Tuesday, of the Australian ballot items are the election of select board candidates and a bond vote for the water sewer line repairs, not expansion, repairs of existing sewer line. And that's voted Australian ballot. And we do not have, budget will be done by that point.
Correct.
Yes,
The
the budget will be done.
the only budget related item on Tuesday, we'll be approving
Conservation.
funding of conservation fund by 1 cent to municipal tax in 23-24. So that's voted on
By
by
Australian ballot,
Australian ballot on Tuesday.
as it has been for the past, X number of years.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, the last, I think just 4 or 5 years, we came into that issue.
Okay, moving along to approval of minutes, warrants and purchase orders. We have one purchase order.
We have one purchase order. We start there? Or you
Yes,
wanna start
please. Let's
minutes?
start with the purchase order.
Okay,
Oh,
it's-
or minutes, whatever you have
it's your-
available.
It's your call. I can do whatever.
We can,
Here comes
This
the
is your
purchase
last
order.
chance to use your power.
yes, right. Gonna miss
Should
it.
have brought you one of the 2 gavels that
Bart?
Bart has gotten me over the years.
Crazy. You're gonna miss this.
I move we accept the purchase order 4513 in the amount of $1,683,677.04 for our education third
Whenever
quarter
you-
taxes.
Pull that down just one.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
June, I.
I move we accept the minutes,
Of
the
February
previous meetings.
6th.
Yep. October 6th.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? I have one thing, page 7. And I think it's almost at the bottom and let me have this.
I had typos, but I don't think they're necessary.
So it said that I said we are not budgeted to buy a cruiser this year. But now I'm confused because we weren't. Is it the next year that we were? Oh, no, because we were talking about budgeting. We were talking about, we know we're not buying a cruiser this year, and then we decided we're not buying a cruiser next year.
So next year, we took it out of the budget.
Right.
This current fiscal year
So we are not
23.
budgeted this year. Oh, we were budgeted
Well,
this
we
year.
were budgeted in
We made the
23.
decision not
We
to.
made a decision to not do that. We did not add one to 24, so it depends on what you mean by this year.
It
And I'd have to
was
review the
this
video.
year. And so I think I was thinking, I didn't say we are not budgeted. I thought we said we are not purchasing.
Do you want to have Duncan review the video?
Yes,
and make the
please. Could
change
you?
if, and we can make the change if,
Yeah,
video
if it's
comes out.
pertinent, yes.
Duncan, you got that? Sure he does. Page 7. I'll make a note.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a couple of typos on page 8. At top of page 8, it's changing, not changing. So the first line at the top of page 8, they're not changing the
okay.
budget, changing. And further down, Hill's comment, when does a police officer's shirt actually start?
About this far down.
It depends on the officer, I think.
It's kind of a personal question, Bard.
Okay.
I think it meant shift.
Oh, shit. Yeah, shift. Okay.
Good thing there's an R in that typo.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else on the minutes? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
J.I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
June, I. And the warrants.
You have a question on one of them. I can find it.
I have a couple questions.
Okay. And where to go?
Let's see. Payroll warrants. Payroll,
The regular or the AP? And I guess, do you want warrants or invoices?
I want invoices, thank you.
I'll probably do AP.
And if you go all the way to the bottom, actually, there's 2 documents you have to look at here. So,
This is the Viewers.
yeah, so why is this just Beamers?
Yeah, I think this is just the Beamers. So we're adding up
Got it.
There's deduction and the employer contributions to be 28.55.
All right.
Yeah.
That answers my question. I'm good.
Okay.
I had a question on, the accounts payable for payroll. It's be in the same, it'd be the report that had these, benefits. What is Mission Square?
I think that's that's in the AP here.
Which?
Sorry, you want to look in here, I think.
No, no, it's not, it's the
Oh,
printout that,
It's just on the warrant.
Connie, yeah.
Sorry.
The warrant general.
Payroll. I think.
AP.
Payroll.
I want to
Mission
say,
Square, the third one down.
yep,
What is that?
I think,
We had this question once before.
yeah, I believe it's that the extra retirement, and I think there's actually, is there one that goes with that, or no, there's not an
I
associated?
didn't see, I didn't see an invoice for it.
I think that's the
So I-
additional retirement that.
It
people
is
can
additional
sign up
retirement.
for. So it's not anything that's why there's no invoice, because it's nothing that the town pays. It's a pass through that if an employee says they want to put away a little extra into a retirement fund, they pass it through. And we pay that on their behalf.
Yeah.
Or the town pays on their behalf.
I have questions on the Comcast warrants.
No, they were late,
Yeah,
the police one.
yes.
Yep.
And why is that?
I gotta talk to Ben about getting them over to me faster, because I think they're just not getting to us fast, because I know that when we get the other one, that they come to us really quickly, like the one that comes to, is there one for the town in general?
Yes.
So like, I think Linda gets that, turns it back over quick. I did talk to Ben about, you gotta get them over here faster, because I'm assuming they're coming at the same time.
Right,
And
yeah, actually,
like a
theirs
month
comes at the
behind.
end of the month, yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a bill in here for. The bill was dated 12/24 and it was due 1/23 and we're just
We're
getting
just
it
getting
now.
Yep.
Hmm.
Let me find where that is, but yes, I noticed that as well. Talked to Ben about making sure we get those. As soon as he gets them, code them and send them over so we can turn them right around. It is a short time frame, and we're gonna be late on the one that we have now, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so we need to get that sooner so we can turn it around faster. Cause I think it was due like 3 days ago. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
So I don't have a better explanation than we gotta get them over to the office faster when I
Okay.
talked to Ben about that.
I mean, and Comcast would be an easy one to pay online, just.
I think you're right.
It's pretty easy to pay online and there's because like the police comes at a different time than the
Yeah.
fire department and the town and so if they were all just paid online, it just seems like it would be. You see the due date, you gotta get in there the day before and pay it.
Doesn't necessarily, so I do most of my bills online and the checks don't go out instantaneously.
Well,
necessarily.
sometimes they're mailing a paper check on your behalf. Sometimes it's actually an EFT the whole way.
Right.
And we'd still have to go through the approval process. so,
Right.
So it would actually get paid tomorrow. So we still have to get it over in time and then, yeah, go through.
Right, I mean,
the board
that is
approving it, the
true.
Treasurer signing it.
But one of
figure
these
that
said
out, but
the
yeah.
bill was due on the 25th of January and it was paid on the 18th and it was still late.
Yeah. Mm,
And if it could be paid on the 18th
Electronically,
electronically,
it
it
would-
wouldn't have been
well,
late.
Theory, we get there. Yep.
If the bank sends a check, it's still the same problem.
What?
So like if the bank sends a check, so when I pay some accounts, like my credit card account is an electronic payment.
Mhm.
And it goes right from the bank to the credit card. But paying my phone bill does not necessarily, or some other, they print out a physical check and put it in the mail.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should have the bank do it. I'm saying we should do it. I pay everything online myself. So I go in and go boop, and pay the bill to Comcast.
So, so I pay my contractor online. I go to the bank, I say, pay Tom Northup this much amount of money. They will print a check and they'll put it in an envelope and mail it.
Yeah, see, say eliminate the bank, just get online and pay the
But
bill.
the thing is,
He
his
doesn't have
contractor
it.
is not gonna have a
Contractor
portal that you
doesn't
can
have
do
it.
that.
What's that?
The contractor doesn't have an account that you can do that with.
Oh, right,
Right,
but Comcast does.
right. Big merchants are gonna have one.
Yes,
Yes.
should.
The
Yeah.
guy down the street who plows my road does not.
No, I have to write a check. Venmo, come on. All right, discuss items for next
So we need
agenda.
a motion.
Oh, wait, we don't have, do we have a
I
motion?
don't think we have a
We
motion.
need a motion on the
We
warrants.
didn't vote anyway. Okay.
No, we have not.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, yeah.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Third,
Any further discussion?
No,
Please state your name and your vote.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Nine. Now discuss items for next agenda.
I have no idea.
the workshop.
Is that the next, is that a separate meeting?
I think that might warrant a separate meeting.
Mhm.
So we gotta
Should
find
be
a
in a-
date that would probably work for the board and then find a time that would work. We could do some of that probably on email, the schedule.
I think we did this last year, didn't we?
We did.
We
Yep.
did the separate meeting
Yep.
on the audit. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did.
Possible report out from ARPA.
Okay, yep. We'll have the parking hearing. Or the amendment to the traffic ordinance.
Possibly next steps about a gardening committee. We can sit and discuss a tentative charter, that kind of thing, and
Oh, we need to reorganize, well.
Yep, they will be reorganizing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm gonna put a
have-
good word in for Jay, for chair, because I think that he's up for it. So I recommend Jay, and I have not got a vote in it or any skin in the game, so I'm just throwing it out there.
we'll have to. So we'll have the amendments to zoning from planning to review instead of.
yes,
hearing.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's gonna be.
They put a
lot.
ton of work into
They
this.
have.
If you have not read, I mean, I'm sure we've all read verbatim the proposed amendments, but they really put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot.
And they've anticipated a ton of what ifs that I'm glad they included.
So something I would like to do sometime early in our year is come up with a kind of a plan for our meeting. You know, what like strategic things do we want to work on, you
mhm.
know, and not instead of just, oh, 10 o'clock at night. I think we ought to do that next time. You know, to come up with some kind of plan for particularly policies.
We talked about that recently because Jay and I reviewed the personnel policies and we just haven't had time to,
That's on me.
but you haven't
I
had
haven't
time, like,
looked at it.
we've got a few things going on here,
I
so.
mean, and actually, I mean, sort of broader, I remember, was it 2 years ago, checking with some other town managers about how do they handle. Like every week, there's 10 new things, and they were like, we have a scope of work that we sort of agree to. This is what we're getting to, and if there's a bunch of things that come up outside of that,
It's not in the
and
scope.
if we can fit it in, maybe, but otherwise, a lot of times we
That's a
just,
good
we
idea.
just can't do it.
Yeah.
How about an update on the police chief hiring? Do we have any applications?
We can do an update. Yep, I've got some applications.
Any word on our planner?
So police chief hiring, we also have to, I think I need to, I owe you and Bard the letters of interest, which I'll probably try to get to you guys tomorrow. There's not a ton from the community, so I
I
don't,
haven't gotten you mine yet, but I have till 20.
no, but you are nominated by the select board.
Okay,
So I've got a few that came in from the community, so I need to send it to you guys, and then we need to talk about who we're gonna add on to that committee, and I think our police chief applications due, I think, this Friday.
Yeah.
So we've got a healthy amount in already, I'd say. There's a good amount that have come in, and hopefully we'll get some good quality ones this week as well. Planner, we had some interviews a couple weeks ago. I did make an offer to one candidate who was great. But he said it wasn't enough. I reached out to say, well, let's have a conversation. Where could we get? And heard nothing back. We have 3 more interviews between tomorrow and Thursday, though, with 3 new candidates. So
And anybody knocking
Great.
our door down about water and sewer?
I've received no other applications since we talked in December, unfortunately.
Right.
So we should probably circle back up on that conversation as well. That's the one position right now that is, has a lack of interest, I would say.
I'm just gonna throw this out. I know we did a compensation study, but we have opening after opening after opening in department head positions. Is it time to consider looking at the department head positions reimbursement? I don't want to violate the compensation study. We did it for a reason, but I don't like having so many positions open.
well, and I've been having conversations regarding police chief with police officers, and they're saying, saying to me, you're not gonna get anyone with that pay.
So, well, isn't, my understanding of the compensation study is there's a range. And there's discretion on where you place somebody on the schedule when you first hire them. And then it's, you know.
Yeah, and I've been trying to use that discretion based on people's relevant experience and. I mean, there's a little bit of interpretation. I mean, if somebody comes to us and they've been a town planner for 10 years, well, that's pretty easy. But if they've been a town planner for 2 years, but involved in zoning and involved in like, then I've been trying to look at it and say, okay, they've got 2 direct years of experience. They've got these other 8 years. How would I sort of qualify those to then figure out where I can place them on the grid and do that in a way that is justifiable and makes sense? Because I agree, there's those ranges you can place people on, and I've really been trying to.
Right,
to get
like you did
people
with the
in
water and sewer. I won't give specifics,
Right, but
but
that's what I tried
you
to
try
do.
to be very creative.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's still not enough. And it's like, at that
Well,
point, what do you do?
Yeah, and those 2 were some unique situations where one got a counter offer before he even said that
And
he
a
had an
car.
offer. And a car, and that was before he even went to them and said, hey, I might be leaving. And another one was really more about vacation time and comp time that they currently earn that we couldn't come close to. And I think we know we have a pretty generous vacation leave policy based on when we compare to other towns, or at least it's not below average.
Well, I think this could be an item for the agenda, this whole question.
Sure.
Or, you know, or maybe on the strategic planning.
Yes, it should be, we can kick it down the road some, but we do have to face, we've got a lot of openings.
Yeah, and I mean, right, we can talk about it more in detail when we get.
You know, what I'm hoping is when we do hire a police chief, that we set aside sometime over the course of the year, talking strategically about what do we want our police department to look like, you know, and have that conversation with the new chief.
Well, and that's
Yep,
in the
that's
job
part of the job
description,
description.
so.
So I had 2 comments. One, David will remember this, and I don't know if anyone else will. But at one point, we had an annual select board activity calendar. And I think it's worth resurrecting that early in our next incarnation, or at least contemplate that, because it had a combination. There are things that we have to deal with, and just to look at those. And I think it was sometimes helpful to fill in the blanks where there was less full-time. And I think the question of how you manage that workload is really a discussion between the chair and the town manager, right? Like what makes it, what doesn't, in terms of priority. And then the other thing, I'll just say I really wrestled with this staff vacancy because I'm reading about like children's in-home nursing in California, which is 70% vacancy. Literally 70% of the positions are empty. Some of our other agencies in Vermont have 20-30% vacancies. So just the vacancies, that's just an observation for context. I don't know if it helps to say that we're not alone, but we're not alone.
It is everywhere.
Yep.
Immigration. Can we tackle immigration?
We'll
Wait
solve
till I
it
get
March
off.
14th, no problem.
Might be a little outside of it.
All right, are we good? So we we don't need an executive session, my guess.
Mhm.
And so we just need a motion to adjourn.
This is David, so moved.
Jay,
Thank you.
I.
All in, yeah,
Aye.
please state your name and your vote.
This is Jeff.
David, aye.
Bard, aye.
2-9. Thank you very much.
Okay.